Chapter 872. Dong Xingting stared at everyone as a smile appeared on his face. The rewards for the top 3 rankers, given the generosity of the Dongshengxian Gate, would surely be at the Immortal King grade. A treasure of this level was something even Immortal Foundation experts had no way to touch. Yet, the top 3 rankers of this Immortal Banquet actually had a chance to obtain it. How valuable was this? For this Immortal Banquet, the reward for the first ranker is a Sky Rock Rune Bone. This Sky Rock is the mount of one of the 4 paragons of our Dongshengxian Gate. Ordinary Immortal Kings all refer to him as Paragon Sky Rock, an Immortal Foundation greater demon with supreme strength. This rune bone contains the essence energy of Paragon Sky Rock within it. Dong Xingting spoke, causing the hearts of many Immortal Kings of the Dongshengxian Gate to tremble. Paragon Sky Rock, that incomparably lofty Sky Rock. If one could obtain the rune bone, it would definitely be extremely beneficial to one's comprehension. One could even sense the might of Paragon Sky Rock. Below, countless Immortal Foundation experts felt their hearts pounding. If they could obtain the rune bone, how good would that be? Sadly, only the top 3 rankers would be able to obtain it. The reward for the second ranker is also a treasure left behind by a paragon of our Dongshengxian Gate. This paragon once cultivated in a mountain rampart for thousands of years, and after that, the rampart transformed into an immortal rampart, containing the insights of that paragon. In fact, one could even see the essence energy of that paragon. It's extremely valuable. Dong Xingting continued, causing another round of exclamations of shock. Even Immortal Kings would want to obtain it. The 4 paragons of the Dongshengxian Gate were characters that followed the Dongxing Heaven Emperor in his expeditions. They were supreme existences of the Dongshengxian Gate, the 4 strongest subordinates of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. The reward for the third ranker is an Immortal King ranked divine weapon. Because your strength is insufficient to unleash the power of a divine weapon of this level, this is a flying type divine weapon. Dong Xingting slowly spoke. An Immortal King ranked divine weapon was ranked 3rd. What concept was this? The 3 rewards were all Immortal King ranked treasures. Are you satisfied now? Dong Xingting smiled at Jun Mengchen. Ha, in that case, I will get one of them. Jun Mengchen laughed heartily. His tone was still casual, but it also gave off an extremely arrogant feeling. It was as if he had already locked onto the top 3 spots. This was no ordinary level of arrogance. The remaining top 10 were all transcendents. Which one of them wasn't a peerless character? Top 3 was easier said than done. Other than Qin Wentian and the other 2 demon-level geniuses, the others, Gusu Tianqi, Feather King, Hua Taishu, Ruthless, Yi Qianchen, Qin Ta, and Mo1. Every time the spectators saw these 10 people, they would feel a headache. They had a feeling that eliminating any one of them was an extremely cruel thing. I have a question I wish to consult your highness. At this moment, Princess Liuli spoke. Dong Xingting smiled. Princess, please speak. Hua Taishu and Ruthless are part of the top 10. In that case, will they be included in the final rankings? Princess Liuli asked. Hua Taishu and Ruthless were the disciples of the Myriad Incarnations Immortal King and the Undefeatable Devil King respectively. Not only that, the Myriad Incarnations Immortal King wasn't someone from the Dongshengxian Gate. What would happen if they were to be part of the top 3? Would the Dongxing Heaven Emperor also accept them as his personal disciples? Naturally, they will be included. Since they are part of the top 3, the rewards will still belong to them. My royal father won't force them to do things against their will, they can freely choose if they want to take my royal father as their master or not. Everyone will be treated equally. Dong Xingting laughed heartily, exuding an aura of elegance. Amicham, I understand. Princess Liuli's countenance didn't change, but her heart was as clear as a mirror. Hua Taishu and Ruthless participating in the selection test was also a ploy by Dong Xingting. If the 2 of them were to become part of the top 3, the other participants would naturally have no qualifications to take the Dongxing Heaven Emperor as their master. If not, if others were to say that the talents of the immortal emperor's disciples were inferior to the disciples of the myriad incarnations immortal king and the undefeatable devil king, wouldn't that be too good to hear? What sort of character was the Dongxing Heaven Emperor? Even if he didn't accept many disciples, he wouldn't allow such words to appear. Although in truth, it was impossible for all the disciples of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor to be more talented compared to the disciples of the other immortal kings, at the very least, such words must not appear in this once-a-100-year immortal banquet. Everything that happened here would surely be circulated around the immortal realms. Your Highness, the ranking test of the top 10 has to be carried out with extreme caution. We can't use a single battle to determine the rankings. I suggest we use 3 rounds of battles, just like how the top 10 participants suppressed their cultivation bases to compete against each other. This is the most direct test of combat prowess, there has to be such a battle. As for the first 2 rounds, we can invite the immortal kings here to act, testing their will and temperament. At this moment, a supreme immortal king from the Dongshengxian Gate spoke in a low voice. Naturally, as for the specifics, Your Highness has to make the final decision. I'm merely giving you a suggestion. What you said is logical. Combat prowess is the most important test. Since their cultivation bases are different, it's best to suppress one's cultivation base and fight against each other. However, we can't use a single battle to determine everything. Dongxing Ting smiled and nodded. Let's do as you say. There will be 3 rounds and the rankings will be determined after each round. It's best if we use the results of the 3 rounds to determine the final ranking. Your Highness will make the decision. The immortal kings at the side nodded in agreement. For the first round, we shall hand it over to the Dream Demon King. It's most suitable for the Dream Demon King to be the one testing the top 10. Dongxing Ting glanced at an immortal king not far away from him. This immortal king was clad in black robes, but he was currently leaning against a chair, sleeping leisurely as though he was in a deep sleep. Dongxing Ting didn't mind, he knew that the Dream Demon King had heard his words. This Dream Demon King was definitely the nightmare of many experts. He could kill in his dreams and was one of the most terrifying existences in the Dongshengxian Gate. Indeed, it's very suitable for the Dream Demon King to be the one testing the top 10. The immortal kings laughed. However, it's still early now. Let's let them rest for a while more before we continue drinking. Dongxing Ting raised his wine cup and toasted the immortal kings. The group of them chatted, the atmosphere was extremely harmonious. Senior brother. At this moment, Jun Mengchen stared at Qin Wentian as he spoke. Qin Wentian turned to Jun Mengchen only to hear Jun Mengchen transmitting his voice to him, Senior brother, you have a grudge with Dongxing Ting and Deep Flame. Before this, the Deep Flame Immortal King hinted that you are destined to not be able to enter the top 3. In addition, this Dongxing Ting has always been very polite, like a smiling tiger. Would he intentionally target you in the final round? Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed, he didn't expect Jun Mengchen to have thought of this point. Before this, he heard Dongxing Ting saying that there would be 3 rounds and the final round would be a head-on battle. The rules were all set by Dongxing Ting and it wasn't impossible for Dongxing Ting to target him. Mengchen, if they really want to target us, all 3 of us might be targeted. Let's counter soldiers with generals and do our best. During the most important round, they wouldn't be able to target us even if they wanted to. Qin Wentian replied. Jun Mengchen nodded his head, if they really want to target us, let's turn the heavens and earth upside down. The 3 of them chatted but Dongxing Ting's carefree voice drifted over, everyone, the rules for the top 10 have already been set. For the first round, the Dream Demon King shall act. Now, the top 10 geniuses, please step onto the battle platform. When the 10 geniuses heard this, they respectively stepped onto the platform and stood in different locations. The Dream Demon King was still sleeping, it was like he had never woken up before. For this round, the Dream Demon King will act. Whoever can no longer persist will be ranked last, and the one who can persist till the end will be ranked first. Naturally, this is merely the ranking for the first round. For the next 3 rounds, there will be rankings for all participants. At the very end, the overall ranking will be determined. Dongxing Ting slowly spoke. He then stared at the Dream Demon King and continued, now, Senior can act. There were no signs or auras. The Dream Demon King didn't even move, but at this instant, the 10 geniuses on the platform suddenly felt the scene before their eyes changing. They were no longer on the battle platform. Dreamscape. Qin Wentian's countenance flickered. Right now, around him was a vast land. He was brought into the dreamscape of the Dream Demon King. Soundless and formless. Too powerful, he instantly entered the dreamscape. Qin Wentian stared at his surroundings, there was nothing here. He found a stone platform and sat cross-legged as he closed his eyes to meditate. The silence in this space was so terrifying that it was terrifying. In fact, there were no signs of life at all. It was as though he was exiled into this dreamscape. Time seemed to pass by a very long time. Qin Wentian calmed his heart and focused, not caring about external matters. But at this moment, his eyes opened. In front of him, a silhouette appeared. This silhouette was pure and flawless, akin to a snow lotus on an ice mountain. That perfect body was flawless, and her beautiful eyes were so clear and penetrating. Qing'er. Qin Wentian mumbled. He stared at the silhouette that appeared, are you okay? Qing'er's countenance changed as a soul-stirring smile appeared on her face. This is just a dream, how can you appear here? Qin Wentian laughed in self-mockery. But he truly missed Qing'er. As he thought of this, his lips curled up in a smile as many scenes flashed before his eyes. The time he spent with Qing'er all flashed before his eyes. From the first time they met in the Celestial Lake Palace, Qing'er was instructed by Fairy Qingmei to follow him. Bit by bit, these scenes appeared in his vision. Qin Wentian was immersed in his memories. Traces of longing could be seen in his eyes. This is the dreamscape of the Dream Demon King. Am I unable to stabilize my state of mind? I'm actually missing Qing'er. Qin Wentian silently mused. He discovered that at this moment, he was no longer in the wilderness. Instead, he was truly immersed in his memories. These memories were like a dream that was happening right now. Abruptly, Qin Wentian felt his entire body turning cold as cold sweat appeared on his back. He also cultivated the mandate of dreams. This wasn't the dream of the Dream Demon King, it was his dream. The Dream Demon King was spying on his dreams, spying on his memories. No. Qin Wentian guarded his mind, wanting to block out all distracting thoughts. However, he discovered that the scenes of the past flashed before his eyes one after another. At this moment, it wasn't only about Qing'er, it was also about himself. The spectators naturally didn't know what was happening to them. The top 10 geniuses all stood on the platform unmoving. The Dream Demon King didn't move at all from the start to the end. Only Dongxing Ting's eyes gleamed brightly as he stared at the participants. When his gaze landed on Qin Wentian, it would flicker with sharpness. Chapter 873. What sort of status did the Dream Demon King have? He was the king of dreams and had control over powerful law energy. He could easily enter the dreamscape of others. Where did dreams come from? They were born from the subconscious of humans. The Dream Demon King could make use of dreams to invade the subconscious of humans, prying into their most important memories. In the depths of Qin Wentian's consciousness, his most precious memories would naturally appear. At this moment, Qin Wentian's aura gushed forth frenziedly. There was actually a powerful tempest that engulfed the platform, erupting forth, causing many people to be startled as they stared in the direction of Qin Wentian. In the dreamscape, Qin Wentian wanted to break free from it, stabilizing his state of mind, not allowing the Dream Demon King to pry into his memories. However, it was as though he was being controlled by a mysterious law energy, he had no way to break free from those memories. He thought of Qingqing again. It was like he could see Qingqing waiting for him in the particle world. That flawless countenance, her beautiful eyes like water, filled with boundless longing, as though she was waiting for his return. The medicine sovereign stood beside Qingqing, trying to persuade her. These were the thoughts in his subconscious, manifesting in his dreamscape. Qin Wentian's countenance turned pale and unsightly. The more he recalled, the more the Dream Demon King would understand him, and the more secrets he would be able to pry into. Rage. At this moment, Qin Wentian felt as though he was split into two. On one side, he wanted to struggle free. But on the other side, he couldn't control himself. Despicable. Qin Wentian roared in his heart. Was this really a test? This was clearly spying on him. To Wu Xiu, this was a great taboo. No stellar martial cultivator was allowed to pry into the memories of others. Everyone had their own secrets, and once this taboo was breached, it would result in a great deal of hatred. Hence, for those who were proficient in soul-searching, no one would be willing to interact with them. And the Dream Demon King was making use of this test to pry into his memories. His memories flashed unceasingly. He thought of his loved ones in the particle world. His foster father Qin Chuan, Yi Qingyun, his sister Qin Yao, World Ruohuan, his master Mustang and the others. He also thought of Fatty Fan Lu, Ouyang Guangsheng and the others. This can't go on. Qin Wentian's other voice bellowed. An imposing figure seemed to appear in front of him. This figure looked at him with a smile, yet it was indomitable. Wisps of white flames started burning in his body, getting brighter and brighter, illuminating his heart. In an instant, it engulfed his entire body. Get out! A furious roar resounded through the fighting ring. Qin Wentian suddenly opened his eyes and took a few steps back. He had already woken up. At this instant, numerous gazes landed on Qin Wentian. Dong Xingting's countenance was as calm as ever, but a sharp light flickered within. The deep flame immortal king was coldly laughing in his heart. Top 3. Did he really think he could enter the top 3? Qin Wentian was indulging in the wildest fantasies. No matter if he came here with sincerity and wanted to fight for another chance to enter the tutelage of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, Dong Xingting would never allow him to enter the top 3. As for Dong Xingting, he was the controller of the rules. Although on the surface he was asking for the opinions of everyone, there was no need to doubt who the true controller of the rules was. Dong Xingting. The first genius to be unable to persist, this Qin Wentian is ranked number 27 in the Cloud Prefecture. His combat prowess is extremely powerful, but who would have thought that he would be the first to fail in the first test? An immortal king sighed. The Dream Demon King tests one's will and temperament. Sometimes, although one's combat prowess is strong, it doesn't mean that one's will and temperament would be outstanding as well. In addition, there are no weaklings among the top 10. All of them are extremely powerful. It's only normal for Qin Wentian to be the first to be eliminated. Another immortal king stated. Don't be anxious, this is only the first test. Who knows, maybe he would have an outstanding performance in the next 2 rounds. Seniors, don't be too hasty to make a judgment. Dong Xingting laughed, as though he was speaking up for Qin Wentian. Princess Lioli's beautiful eyes flickered with a strange light as she stared at Qin Wentian on the platform. From her perspective, Qin Wentian shouldn't be the first to be eliminated. This person's patience was extremely strong, his will was extremely resolute, and his temperament was extraordinary. Even if he wasn't the most outstanding, he wouldn't be the first to be eliminated. As she thought of this, Princess Glaze cast a deep glance at the sleeping Dream Demon King, as well as the other immortal kings who were whispering to each other. All of them were laughing and chatting with each other, as though none of them had discovered anything amiss at all. This scene was so obvious. However, did they really not know anything at all? Unable to persist. Qin Wentian exited because he couldn't persist any longer. He took the initiative to break free. Qin Wentian stood on the platform as he surveyed his surroundings. The other 9 participants were still immersed in their respective tests and hadn't exited yet. His eyes gleamed with sharpness as he stared in the direction of the Dream Demon King. However, he didn't say anything. What would he say? That he had been treated unfairly? This place was the Dongshengshan Gate and the Dream Demon King was the examiner appointed by Dong Xingting. The Dream Demon King only needed to find an excuse and say that it was one of the tests. What could Qin Wendian do? Maybe, Dongxing Ting set up this test so that if he lost, he wouldn't be able to refute. If he did, the other immortal kings could directly say that his temperament was too weak. And if he lost, he could still blame the examiner, the Dream Demon King. Dongxing Ting was telling him whose territory this was. The words of the Deep Flame Immortal King rang out in his mind. Some endings were already destined. But was it really destined? Qin Wendian closed his eyes and sat cross-legged on the platform, not saying a single word. He had long prepared himself in his heart and was prepared to be targeted. In that case, what else could he say? Everything would depend on the ending. The tests of the others continued. Time flowed by and Qin Ta was the second to exit. After him was Zi Qingxian. Zi Qingxian was the third to awaken. When she woke up, her breathing was hurried and she drew in a deep breath before she stabilized her state of mind. She saw that Qin Wendian had also awoken as a look of bewilderment appeared on her face. She transmitted her voice to Qin Wendian. What did you encounter in the dreamscape? Memory prying. He wanted to pry into my memories but I broke free from it myself. Qin Wendian didn't hide anything from Zi Qingxian. He then asked, what about you? What a terrifying dreamscape. He was searching for the things I feared the most in my subconscious, trying to provoke me. Zi Qingxian stared at Qin Wendian. Seems like the Dream Demon King treats everyone differently. For the 10 of them, the difficulty of the tests can be completely different and he can even decide the rankings. Qin Wendian coldly transmitted his voiceover. Zi Qingxian understood. So what if this was the test of the Dongshengshan Gate? At the start, everything was done according to the rules. But at the end of the test, if there was something fishy going on, who would dare to pursue the matter? Yi Qianchen was the fourth to exit. After him was Jun Mengchen. Senior brother Qin, senior sister Qingxian, what are your rankings? Jun Mengchen directly transmitted his voiceover. I'm third from the bottom. Zi Qingxian replied. I'm first from the bottom. Qin Wendian replied. The words of the two of them caused Jun Mengchen's eyes to narrow as his countenance turned extremely unsightly to behold. How outstanding were the performances of these 3 fellow apprentices before this. But when it came to the ranking of the top 10, their performances were no longer so outstanding. The top 10 are simply too strong. An immortal king in the banquet spoke. That's true. Qin Wendian, Hua Taishu and Hua Taishu were all ranked at the bottom 5. Not a single one of them managed to enter the top 5. Such a performance wasn't as outstanding as their earlier performances. After that, Mo Wen was also eliminated, followed by Ruthless and Feather King. Gusu Tianqi, as expected of a supreme genius, and also the disciple of the myriad incarnations Immortal King. He has experienced the world of reincarnation and his state of heart is extraordinary. The crowd sighed in admiration when they saw Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu persisting till the end. Myriad incarnations, your disciple is truly outstanding. Someone stared at the myriad incarnations Immortal King as he laughed. The myriad incarnations Immortal King had a smile on her face. For this round, if the conditions were the same, she felt that Hua Taishu would definitely be ranked first. But at this moment, Hua Taishu's eyes suddenly opened. The myriad incarnations Immortal King was bewildered when she saw this scene, but she merely smiled in response. That's right, if her disciple was ranked first, wouldn't it be a little too inappropriate? Gusu Tianqi was the last to awaken. The 10 of them all woke up one after another. The Dream Demon King was still in a deep slumber, as though nothing had happened. Everything had nothing to do with him. Many thanks for the Dream Demon King's help. Dongxing Ting smiled. He stared at the top 10 geniuses on the platform as he spoke. Everyone, being able to persist for so long under the Dream Demon King's test is truly extraordinary. This is especially so for Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu. Awesome. Naturally, for those who are ranked at the bottom, don't be discouraged. Dong Xingting spoke as he turned his gaze to Qin Wendian and smiled. There are still 2 more rounds of tests after this. As long as your performance is outstanding, you would still be able to turn the tables around. All the immortal kings, let's see your performance. The participants all fell silent. Qin Wendian stared at Dong Xingting's handsome countenance, exuding a graceful demeanor. Everything seemed so natural to him. Now, I shall announce the rankings for the first round. First, Gusu Tianqi. Second, Hua Taishu. Third, Feather King. Fourth, Ruthless. Fifth, Mo1. Sixth, Jun Mengchen. Seventh, Yi Qianchen. Eighth, Zi Qingxian. Ninth, Qin Ta. And 10th, Qin Wendian. Dong Xingting slowly spoke, announcing the rankings for the first round. In this round, Qin Wendian's ranking was directly pushed to the last place. The eyes of the deep flame immortal king flickered as he stared at the platform. Dong Xingting was truly ruthless enough. In this case, what could Qin Wendian do to turn the tables around? Top 3. Dream On. Chapter 874. Dong Xingting had a smile on his face, exuding an extraordinary demeanor. He stared at the participants as he continued, the rankings of the first round can't determine the final rankings. Next, everyone still has to work hard and fight for the top 3 positions. Can I give you a suggestion? At this moment, a voice drifted over from the ancient Zhantian platform. Momentarily, everyone turned their gazes over. It was none other than Jun Mengchen. Dong Xingting also noticed Jun Mengchen as he smiled. Speak. For the second round, can you be more transparent? At the very least, let everyone know what we experienced. Jun Mengchen faintly spoke, his words causing strange expressions to appear on the faces of the participants. Given their intelligence, they naturally understood the meaning behind Jun Mengchen's words. However, although this Jun Mengchen had an explosive temper, he didn't say it so directly. But evidently, he was hinting at something. In the earlier first round, the Dream Demon King entered our dreamscape. I asked my senior brothers and sisters about it, and the experiences of everyone are different. Although Senior Dream Demon King is the one controlling everything, it's inevitable that there would be some deviation. In fact, if I were to say something disrespectful, Senior Dream Demon King can decide the rankings with a single thought. Because in front of Senior Dream Demon King, we have no way to resist at all. If he wants us to come out, we have to come out. Jun Mengchen continued, his tone sharper than before. However, he still didn't doubt the results of the first round and wouldn't really go against Dong Xingting and the Dream Demon King. He understood that there would be no results if he did so. Hence, I suggest to your highness that for the second round, it's better to be more transparent. In this case, at the very least, everyone would know what they experienced and the seniors here would be able to see it with a single glance. At the very least, no one would doubt the results of the second round. After all, this is the immortal banquet hosted by the Dong Shengshan Gate. Jun Mengchen's last sentence was extremely obvious. This was the immortal banquet of the Dong Shengshan Gate. If you, Dong Xingting, wanted to control things from the shadows, you could directly decide the ending. I also agree with Jun Mengchen's suggestion. I hope your highness can consider it. Zi Qingxian added. Her countenance was calm, no emotions could be seen in her beautiful eyes. I think so too. At this moment, an indifferent voice rang out. It was Mo Wen's voice. 3 people had spoken up consecutively. This was not a lightweight, and one of them was not Qin Wendian. I also hope that next time, if I, Qin, am in last place again, I will be convinced. Qin Wendian faintly spoke. Mo Wen's attitude caused him to be taken aback. Initially, he didn't want to say anything, but in this case, 4 out of the 10 participants had already expressed their opinions. This Dong Xingting had no choice but to seriously consider their opinions. The 4 of them clearly pointed out a topic. If Dong Xingting insisted on doing things his way, it would be too obvious. Since all of you have put it this way, I, Dong Xingting, naturally agree. Dong Xingting straightforwardly agreed with no hesitation. The misunderstanding caused by the first round was due to my lack of consideration. The 10 participants in the final round are all peerless geniuses, brimming with confidence. It's only natural for them to feel indignant about being ranked at the bottom. I should have thought of this earlier. I should have arranged for everyone to see the battle clearly so that I wouldn't be questioned. For the first round, I caused everyone to misunderstand. The 10 participants of the second round are all supreme geniuses that exuded boundless magnificence throughout the generations and were filled with confidence. Since they were ranked last, they naturally wouldn't be convinced in their hearts. I should have thought of this earlier and arranged for a round where everyone could see it clearly. That way, I wouldn't be doubted. As the sound of his voice faded, a moment later, several experts moved a gigantic devil statue towards the battle platform. This devil statue was extremely terrifying, containing an intense will within it. It had 3 heads and 6 arms, 3 faces and 3 pairs of eyes. No matter where one was, they would be able to see the devil statue's eyes with a single glance. This devil statue was extremely terrifying, as though it contained an intense will within. It had 3 heads and 6 arms, 3 faces and 3 pairs of eyes. No matter where one was, they would be able to see the devil statue's eyes with a single glance. However, when the participants stared intently at the devil statue's eyes, they instantly felt a terrifying vortex swirling around them. Those pitch-black eyes seemed to want to devour them as numerous terrifying devil generals lunged towards them, causing their countenances to tremble as they hurriedly averted their gazes, guarding their hearts and minds. This devil statue is extremely strange. The hearts of everyone trembled. Those experts moved the devil statue towards the platform and directly moved it up, placing it at the center of the platform. Qin Wendian and the other 8 geniuses already discovered the strangeness of the devil statue when it was moved up. This devil statue contained a fearsome will and was able to attack people. Dong Xingting then spoke, "The second test is very simple. This devil statue contains an extremely powerful will. You guys just have to circle around it and stare at the eyes of the statue, enduring its might. Whoever can shift their eyes away first would be ranked last, and whoever persisted the longest would be ranked first. In this case, the test should be transparent enough, right?" Dong Xingting nodded, "That's right." Qin Wendian nodded. The participants didn't say anything more. Dong Xingting continued, "Right now, the 10 of you, stand in your positions and circle around the devil statue. Close your eyes and when I say, start, all of you have to open your eyes at the same time and stare into the eyes of the statue." The 10 geniuses followed Dong Xingting's instructions and stood in 10 different positions around the devil statue. They faced the statue and closed their eyes. In just an instant, all 10 of them were in their positions. It's about to begin. The second round is extremely important. Qin Wendian, Jun Mengchen, and Zi Qingxian didn't seem to be convinced by the results of the first round and were ranked at the back. But if their rankings are any worse in the second round, there's no hope for them to enter the top 3. Gusu Tianqi is indeed the top ranker of the Eastern Prefecture. His popularity is still the highest and there's no need to doubt his combat prowess. And in the first round of the test, he already obtained the first position. As long as he is ranked within the top 3 in this round, he would already be one of the top 3 rankers. The disciple of the myriad incarnations immortal king, Hua Taishu also has a high chance of entering the top 3. Other than Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu, there's only Feather King left. Before this, they all thought that Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen also had a high chance of entering the top 3. But after the first round, their ranking was already too low. Their chances of entering the top 3 had plummeted. Now, they had to see if they could turn the situation around. Begin. At this moment, Dong Xingting's voice rang out. The 10 geniuses all opened their eyes at the same time, staring into the eyes of the devil statue. At the instant Qin Wendian opened his eyes, he instantly felt his heart trembling. This was a pair of devil eyes, akin to an unparalleled abyss. In just an instant, one's consciousness would be drawn into it. Qin Wendian had a feeling that his soul was being pulled into another dimension. That was a strand of his consciousness being drawn into the eyes of the devil statue. This was a terrifying abyss, a blood-colored world where there was no daylight. This entire world was akin to purgatory. The ancient city was in ruins, the earth was broken, and there were many broken divine weapons stabbed into the ground, stained with fresh blood. Abruptly, Qin Wentian inclined his head as his heart pounded violently. He saw a devil that was over 10 million meters tall, like a supreme devil king staring at him. This devil stretched his hand out, and a moment later, a blood-colored saber appeared in his hand, exuding a terrifying aura. The devil lifted the saber and slashed it out, causing the heavens and earth to be split apart. Qin Wentian's countenance paled. There was no way he could defend against this saber that slashed through the skies. A single slash was sufficient to slay him. No, it's just a strand of my consciousness. As long as my soul remains, my will remains unaffected. Qin Wentian warned himself. As the saber light descended, everything dissipated. Qin Wentian's body was directly split apart. It was as though he had just experienced a baptism of death. Outside, Qin Wentian's original body groaned in misery. His countenance was as pale as paper, and he felt an intense pain in his head. He took a step back, but his gaze was still fixed on the statue before him, unwavering. His eyes were still fixated on that pair of devilish eyes. The devil eyes contained a terrifying devouring power. Once again, a strand of Qin Wentian's consciousness was drawn into it. Qin Wentian appeared in that blood-colored world once more. The devil king in the air was still staring at him, exuding an incomparably terrifying coldness. This time, the devil king's palm slashed downwards. Qin Wentian felt the heavens and earth turning dark. He wanted to flee, yet he discovered that there was no place for him to flee. In just an instant, his body was grabbed by the incomparably gigantic Devil King, lifted up and placed in front of his eyes. The eyes of the Devil King were as terrifying as the abyss, able to pierce through him with a single glance. After that, the Devil King clenched his fist, causing Qin Wentian to feel a sense of despair and agony. After that, his body directly turned into ashes as he experienced death once more. This time around, it was even more miserable compared to the last time. Qin Wentian's original body retreated a few more steps as he groaned in misery. His countenance grew even paler. Not only him, the others also had some reaction. It was just that Qin Wentian's reaction was the most intense. In fact, Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with a blood-red light. However, he continued to stare fixedly ahead. That pair of devilish eyes was like a bottomless abyss, corroding his sea of consciousness once more. There was no way to block it at all. Could it be that this Qin Wentian's will is truly weak? Before this, he was ranked last. But now, the one with the greatest reaction is him again. An immortal king spoke. However, the myriad incarnations immortal king, undying immortal king and the others all frowned, feeling some doubt in their hearts. They had met Qin Wentian before in the past. He was extremely powerful and had a resolute will. Although the 10 people here were all very strong, he shouldn't be the weakest among them. However, the truth was right before their eyes. Everyone was facing the same predicament. Qin Wentian was no exception. Bai Wuya was calm from start to end. From the start till the end, he didn't say anything and was like an outsider. Although the countenance of the white-robe immortal king was calm, there were waves of shock in his heart. This examination was truly difficult for these little fellows. Dongxing Ting clearly didn't allow them to obtain the top 3. Qin Wentian, if they wanted to pass the examination, they had to fight against the rules. Casting a deep glance at the devil statue, Bai Wuya completely believed that there was something strange about this statue. Chapter 875. Qin Wentian's consciousness was drawn into that blood-colored world for the 3rd time. The eyes of the Devil King in the air were incomparably cold. He stared at Qin Wentian as he brandished his devil saber once more. Qin Wentian coldly stared at the Devil King in the air. His eyes were filled with a terrifying stubbornness as he coldly spoke, "Severing my consciousness is equivalent to severing my life, injuring my state of mind. You can easily force me to retreat. Close your eyes, I don't dare to look directly into the eyes of the devil statue. His voice was extremely cold. When his consciousness entered the statue, the Devil King directly destroyed it. You want to force me to retreat with a single strike? In that case, my ranking will be fixed at the bottom. Who exactly are you? Qin Wendian coldly spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, a terrifying aura descended. The Devil King didn't say anything, he merely stared at him with his cold blood-colored eyes. Another slash of his saber slashed out, one of his arms was severed. It was incomparably painful, one could even see blood dripping unceasingly from where his severed arm was severed. As expected, you have your own consciousness. Qin Wendian inclined his head and stared at the Devil King. Before this, he was only doubtful, but now, he was completely certain. The Devil King of the Devil statue had its own consciousness. If not, how could it be so precise, cutting off one of his arms with a single slash, torturing him to death? Qin Wendian's consciousness was drawn into the statue, he would have all of his senses. Such a torturous killing was to make Qin Wendian struggle in pain, to make him lose, to force him out of the competition. Another beam of saber light slashed down, severing the other arm of Qin Wendian. However, he still stood there. Although his entire body was convulsing in pain, his eyes were still fixated in front of him. The blood-red light slashed down, descending directly from the top of Qin Wendian's head inch by inch, swallowing Qin Wendian bit by bit, as if it had deliberately slowed down the process of killing Qin Wendian to torture Qin Wendian's will. Outside, Qin Wendian let out a muffled groan. Blood even flowed from the corner of his mouth. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and he stumbled backward. His consciousness was constantly being devoured and then killed. This kind of torture was enough to make one's will collapse. This was purgatory torture. Ha, I didn't expect the statues to have their own consciousness and know how to torture and kill me. Again. Qin Wendian laughed maniacally. His terrifying devil eyes gleamed with an incomparably fearsome might. That whirlpool directly caused him to sink into it, sucking his will into it once more. Only Qin Wendian's voice remained, echoing through the air. Everyone was shocked, and their eyes were fixed on Qin Wendian's figure. Many cultivators' eyes were shining brightly. The statue has its own consciousness. Torture and kill him. The gazes of some silently turned to Dongxing Ting only to see Dongxing Ting's expression was as calm as ever. He then spoke, the test of the devil statue is extremely difficult, it's the same for all geniuses. Let them experience the true cruelty of killing and see who can endure it. Dongxing Ting was intentionally explaining to everyone, but was the truth really so? Was the endurance of Qin Wendian's will really the weakest among the 10? If not, why would his reaction be the most intense? Also, what was the consciousness Qin Wendian was talking about? Was this something Qin Wendian fabricated? However, although there were bewilderment in their hearts, the immortal kings naturally wouldn't say anything. This was an immortal banquet of the Dongshengshan Gate and the rules were set by Dongxing Ting. The experts of the Dongshengshan Gate naturally understood what they were doing. As for those experts who came here to attend the banquet, they naturally wouldn't speak carelessly. The spectators only saw Qin Wendian being forced back again and again. Fresh blood flowed unceasingly from the corner of his mouth, dripping onto the ground. Not only Qin Wendian, the other participants were in the same situation as well. It was as though all of them were enduring immense pain. Finally, one person couldn't endure it any longer and shifted his gaze away. This person was none other than the top ranker of the Qian prefecture, Yi Qianchen. Someone as powerful as Yi Qianchen was actually the first person to be eliminated in this round. What sort of might did this devil statue contain exactly? Only to see that in the depths of the Dongshengshan Gate, there was a palace. Within this palace, a gigantic and imposing figure could be seen sitting cross-legged. This was none other than a powerful devil cultivator. His eyes were closed as devil chi revolved around him. At this moment, his consciousness wasn't here, but was focused on the battle platform far away. How tenacious! That devil figure spoke in a low voice. His eyes opened as an extremely cold light flickered within. Those blood-colored devil eyes of his actually bore a slight resemblance to the Devil King within the devil statue. He used all sorts of methods, using all sorts of methods to torture Qin Wendian to death, yet that brat still refused to give up. In this case, he had no choice but to act against the others as well. If not, it would be too obvious that he was targeting Qin Wendian and His Highness would lose face. Sadly, his immortal sense could only exist within the devil statue. He himself was sealed within and couldn't seep out. If not, he would instantly be discovered by the other immortal kings, and that would undoubtedly be a slap to the face of the Dongshengshan Gate. He naturally wouldn't do such a thing. I want to see how long you can endure. That devil cultivator icily spoke, as his will ravaged Qin Wendian's consciousness again and again. Even if Qin Wendian's will was made of iron, he probably wouldn't be able to endure such endless torment. Since that devil statue had its own consciousness, he naturally could do the same as the first round of the test. In the first round, as long as the Dream Demon King was willing, he could easily determine the rankings because his dream covered all 10 participants. For the second round, although it was conducted in secret, at the very least on the surface, the 10 participants were all standing there. Everyone could see their reactions clearly, and the will of this devil cultivator couldn't break out from the devil statue. Hence, he was somewhat restricted. But at the very least, he could still easily control the situation. For example, he could choose who to attack the most frequently. For this point, he could make his own choice. From a certain perspective, this second round of the test, which seemed fair, was actually no different from the first round. However, from the surface, there was no doubt that this test was extremely fair. There were no tricks at all. If it wasn't for Qin Wendian and a few others who voiced their doubts, there wouldn't even be a trace of doubt. A roar of rage rang out. The second participant who couldn't endure any longer was eliminated. This time around, it was the second ranker of the Western Desert Prefecture, Qin Ta. His combat prowess was extremely high, but his will was a little weak. Hence, he was eliminated. The third person to be eliminated was none other than Zi Qingxian. In the previous round, she was also the third to be eliminated and was ranked third from the bottom. Zi Qingxuan's countenance turned pale. She stared at the devil statue before her as a cold light flickered in her eyes. She had already endured too much, but ultimately, she couldn't endure any longer. Her will was already on the verge of collapse and she could only choose to retreat. However, her cold eyes were burning with the flames of doubt. She could also sense that the Devil King in the statue had its own consciousness. Since it could think, there was a possibility that it would target her. If the Devil King wanted to target someone, the first person to bear the brunt of it should be Qin Wendian. Zi Qingxian turned her gaze to Qin Wendian only to see that Qin Wendian was in an extremely miserable state. His body was almost pushed to the edge of the platform, and in between him and the devil statue, traces of blood that had yet to dry could be seen. If it wasn't for the fact that Qin Wendian was bitterly enduring, he would have long given up. The final test was divided into 3 rounds. In the first round, Qin Wendian was already ranked last. This was the second round. If he was ranked last again, no matter how outstanding he was in the final round, he wouldn't be able to enter the top 3. He had to do everything he could to reach the top of the rankings. He mustn't be defeated again. With a howl of rage, Qin Wendian's will was severed once more. In that instant of time, he actually took a step forward before his will was sucked into the devil statue once more. This was like a cycle of reincarnation, with no end in sight. The remaining 7 were bitterly enduring, pushing their limits. Finally, Jun Mengchen couldn't hold on any longer. Although he gave it his all, he still couldn't persist any longer. For this round, he could only be ranked number 7. Qin Wendian was still persisting. He actually started to step in the opposite direction. Every step he took was accompanied by the determination of his blood. "Senior brother, just give up." Jun Mengchen spoke in a low voice when he saw how much pain Qin Wendian was enduring. He knew how difficult it was for Qin Wendian inside. That perverted Devil King was using cruel methods to torture them. Qin Wentian didn't give up. Mo Wen couldn't persist any longer and was ranked number 6 in this round. He's in the top 5. Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian both clenched their fists. Under such circumstances, Qin Wentian was ranked in the top 5. In order to not be too obvious, right now, everyone was enduring the pain of their will being destroyed. In addition, the frequency was the same as Qin Wentian. The next one who couldn't endure any longer was Ruthless. Even he who cultivated devil arts couldn't endure any longer and was ranked number 5. Top 4. Jun Mengchen's eyes gleamed with sharpness. The powerful Feather King finally shifted his gaze away. Top 3. Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian helped Qin Wentian to count the rankings. But after some time, Qin Wentian finally coughed out a mouthful of blood as he shifted his gaze away. He squatted down, feeling his entire body drenched in sweat as his aura weakened. His ranking was also fixed. For this round, he was ranked number 3. Senior brother. Jun Mengchen's silhouette flickered as he appeared before Qin Wentian. Don't worry. Qin Wentian glanced at Gu Zhantian. There were still 2 more participants, it was enough for him to obtain the top 3. He sat down cross-legged as the power of his bloodline surged. A strand of flawless white flames circulated around his body, gradually healing his damaged mental state. The last 2 participants were still persisting. Ultimately, the first to give up was Gusu Tianqi. His will was so strong that he managed to persist till the end. Hua Taishu actually defeated Gusu Tianqi in terms of will, obtaining the number 1 position. Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu. In the first round, Gusu Tianqi was number 1 while Hua Taishu was number 2. In this round, the 2 of them were the exact opposite. As long as they can perform outstandingly in the last round, wouldn't they be able to obtain 2 of the top 3 spots? The eyes of the spectators flickered as they glanced at Qin Wentian. He was frenziedly persisting, bitterly enduring and eventually managed to enter the top 3 in the second round. This was all for the sake of obtaining one of the top 3 spots in the last round. Chapter 876. Dong Xingting stared at the platform as he spoke, "Bring the devil statue down." As the sound of his voice faded, there were people who went to carry the statue away. Many of the 10 geniuses directly sat cross-legged and started their cultivation. Evidently, their hearts and minds had suffered heavy injuries. Everyone, being able to persist for so long, as expected of the strongest geniuses of the 13 prefectures. Now, I shall announce the rankings for the second round. Dong Xingting swept his gaze over. From 1st to 10th, they are, Hua Taishu, Gusu Tianqi, Qin Wentian, Feather King, Ruthless, Mo Wen, Jun Mengchen, Zi Qingxian, Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen. For this round, the will of the participants is severed, it's a tempering of one's will and is extremely cruel. Being able to persist for so long, in the future, all of you would definitely have great accomplishments. Dong Xingting straightforwardly spoke, his voice resonating with the earth. As for the inside story, he didn't reveal anything at all, as though there was no inside story at all. Everyone was treated equally and had the same experience. On the platform, the spectators all personally witnessed this. Kacha! Jun Mengchen clenched his fists tightly as he stared at Dong Xingting. However, this time around, even he didn't say anything. He simply sat there was only 1 round left. In a true battle, no one would be able to control the ending. For everything that happened before, even if he resisted, it would be meaningless. This place was the Dongshengshan Gate, this was the examination of the Dongshengshan Gate. In that case, from now onwards, he would set his heart at ease and prepare for the final battle. Seems like everyone is tired. In that case, let's take a rest first. Servants, bring over some fine wine and wait for the final battle to begin. Dong Xingting flicked his sleeves as the serving girls behind him brought over some fine wine and walked up the platform. This wine was an immortal brew and had medicinal properties, capable of healing injuries. The geniuses didn't stand on ceremony and directly poured the wine into their mouths, drinking it to their heart's content. Again. Jun Mengchen directly drained the contents of his wine as he spoke. For the first round, he was ranked number 6. For the second round, he was ranked number 7. As for him, Jun Mengchen, he came here for the top 3. The 2 rounds of results caused a violent rage to burn in his heart. He wanted nothing more than to vent it out. The him right now was like a volcano. Once it erupted, he would be extremely terrifying. In the banquet, the atmosphere was peaceful. There were no arguments, no doubts. Those who knew also pretended not to know, smiling as they discussed the geniuses of the immortal banquet. Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu, why do I feel that both of them are going to become the top 2 rankers? An immortal king smiled. But Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu's combat prowess are both extremely powerful. Are of the top 2. Of the top 2 rankers of the immortal realms. Of Hua of the Eastern Prefecture. An immortal king laughed. King of the immortal at. Of Cloud. At of the top, of the June of the immortal of. Of MHM, the top ranker of the Western Prefecture is extremely powerful. In this immortal realms, the top ranker of the Eastern Prefecture, Gusu Tianqi, is unrivaled. Feather King of the Western Prefecture is extremely tyrannical and outstanding. Also, the Cloud Prefecture. An immortal king spoke as he sighed, the Cloud Prefecture is truly a pity. Yeah, the Cloud Prefecture is truly a pity this time around. 3 geniuses of the Cloud Prefecture managed to kill their way into the top 10. Such a grand occasion has never happened before. Another person sighed. In the direction of the Cloud Prefecture, the idle Cloud Immortal King stared at the battle platform as he felt somewhat indignant in his heart. He could faintly sense the strangeness of the atmosphere. Qin Wentian and the others seemed to be targeted. This was especially so after he recalled the confrontation between the Deep Flame Immortal King and Qin Wentian earlier. From what they said, back then, Qin Wentian had disobeyed Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Dongxing Heaven Emperor initially gave him a chance but abandoned him in the end. This time around, if Qin Wentian was allowed to enter the top 3, it would definitely throw away the face of Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Hence, Dongxing Ting didn't want Qin Wentian and the other 2 to enter the top 3. The idle Cloud Immortal King could only sigh in his heart. He knew that there was something going on behind the scenes, but as a member of the Dongshengshan Gate, it was impossible for him to publicly doubt Dongxing Ting. He could only sigh silently for Qin Wentian and the other 2. Did they really have no fate with the top 3? However, in the Cloud Prefecture's camp, only the idle Cloud Immortal King had a gloating expression on their faces as they stared at Qin Wentian on the battle platform. The 3 of them didn't have any hope to enter the top 3. In addition, both Dongxing Ting and the Deep Flame Immortal King didn't like them. If they couldn't enter the top 3 and become sage child characters of the Dongshengshan Gate, what status would they have? Even if they entered the Dongshengshan Gate, given their personalities, they would definitely not submit to the Deep Flame Immortal King. That would be even more fun. Naturally, they could also choose not to enter the Dongshengshan Gate. Such an ending wasn't too bad, right? Right now, the Deep Flame Immortal King was extremely quiet. He didn't argue with Qin Wentian or provoke them. His disciple Blackpeak was killed by Qin Wentian in front of everyone, and he was provoked by Qin Wentian and the others several times. If it was ordinary people, they would definitely not be able to endure it, but the Deep Flame Immortal King actually endured it. He could only watch as Qin Wentian and the others struggled, putting in so much effort only to end up with nothing. In addition, after this immortal banquet ends, they would all have to pay a price for their actions. If Qin Wentian and the others wanted to join the Dongshengshan Gate, he, the Deep Flame Immortal King, had too many methods to take the lives of Qin Wentian and the others. Time continued to flow. Finally, Dongxing Ting's gaze landed on the battle platform as he spoke. Has everyone rested well? The 10 geniuses all opened their eyes as a dazzling light flashed within. From the start of the selections of the various prefectures, to participating in the grand banquet of the Dongshengshan Gate once every 100 years, everything was all for this final battle. However, there were a few who already felt dispirited. For example, Yi Qianchen and Qin Ta. Their rankings for the first 2 rounds were all at the back, and they knew that their chances of getting into the top 3 weren't high. However, since they have already reached this step, only the final battle was left. Since that was the case, they had to fight to their heart's content. If they could suppress all the other participants and shine brightly on the battle platform, they might still have a sliver of hope. Among the 10 geniuses, even for Gusu Tianqi, who had been enduring silently, his eyes gleamed with a dazzling light. Evidently, he had been anticipating this battle for a very long time. After this battle ended, he, Gusu Tianqi, would become the top ranker of this immortal banquet. Among the geniuses of the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures, he was ranked number 1. Although Gusu Tianqi grew up in the shadows, this glory was still extremely dazzling. The 10 of them all stood up and stood on the battle platform. A gentle wind gusted by, fluttering their long robes as a formless battle intent gushed forth in all directions. It was as though even the immortals from afar could feel the intense battle intent radiating from them. As expected of the 10 strongest geniuses. Just the battle intent radiating from them is so strong that even I can feel it. An immortal king laughed as his eyes gleamed. This battle was held once every 100 years, and this would be the final battle of the immortal banquet, the final battle that would decide the rankings. Although the rankings for the first 2 rounds were already known, the ranking of the final battle was even more important. For example, although Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu had outstanding performances, if they were ranked last in this battle, they wouldn't have a chance to be ranked first or second. In fact, they wouldn't even be able to enter the top 3. If they had the worst performance in the most important battle, what qualifications did they have to enter the top 3? And for Qin Wentian, who was ranked last in the previous battle, if he could suppress all the geniuses in this battle, he would also have a chance to become one of the top 3. This was the weight of this final battle. Cultivation-based suppression. Dong Xingting spoke. In the air, the light from a treasure cascaded downwards, enveloping the entire battle platform. It was as though the bodies of the participants were covered by a layer of multicolored light as the beams of light shot into the bodies of the participants. Cultivation-based suppression, the 10 geniuses were all suppressed to the same level. The battle was about to begin at any moment. There are no rules for this battle. You guys can fight as you please, it's fine even if you want to turn the heavens and earth upside down. There's only one rule, it's forbidden to gang up on each other. Dong Xingting spoke. Let the battle begin now. As the sound of Dong Xingting's voice faded, an oppressive pressure engulfed the entire battle platform. This final battle was a chaotic battle. Terrifying astral winds billowed. Qin Wentian stood at his original location, unmoving. The other participants also stood in different locations, their sharp eyes sweeping over the participants like prey, contemplating how to act. Senior brother, since they want us to be ranked last, let's use this battle to clear our name. Jun Mengchen spoke. Tell me, how should we fight? Sweep them one by one. Mengchen, Qingxian, you guys choose your opponents first. Qin Wentian spoke, his words causing the countenances of the spectators to stiffen. These 3 fellows were so arrogant. Out of the 10 geniuses, 3 of them and the other 7, none of them were weaklings. They were all incomparably tyrannical. Yet these 3 actually dared to say that they would sweep them one by one. I choose Yi Qianchen. Zi Qingxian spoke. I choose Qin Ta. Jun Mengchen spoke. Fine, I will act as your protector. After the battle ends, we can switch again. Qin Wentian spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, Jun Mengchen walked towards Qin Ta. A king battle armor appeared on his body as a supreme ancient king's shadow appeared behind him. It was as though only at this moment could he truly vent his frustrations in battle. A golden flame divine falcon appeared around Zi Qingxian as a gigantic pair of wings appeared. With a flash, she flew towards Yi Qianchen. Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he moved towards the center of the battle platform, exuding an aura of supremacy. When his gaze swept over, it was as though the geniuses here were nothing. Such an aura was like he was invincible among the geniuses of the 13 prefectures. Although he was ranked last before this, the boundless sharpness radiating from him right now was extremely oppressive. Qin Ta roared in rage. He seemed to have transformed into a heavenly god, possessing boundless might. A violent surge of energy ravaged the platform as Qin Ta's footsteps caused the platform to tremble. Qin Ta's movements caused the platform to tremble as a chaotic energy flow engulfed the entire space. What did this Jun Mengchen treat him as? Yi Qianqian was incomparably carefree. The sword qi radiating from him engulfed the entire space, transforming into a terrifying sword qi tempest. The final battle began. Qin Wentian and his fellow apprentice brothers directly launched a frenzied attack. Chapter 877. Jun Mengchen and Qin Ta both started to exchange blows. Jun Mengchen's attacks had always been incomparably tyrannical. He transformed into a supreme king, borrowing the power of the king behind him. Every strike he unleashed could shake the heavens and earth. Qin Ta was an expert from the heavenly god race and had the innate talent of the heavenly god race. His body expanded to a height of 10 meters as a 1,000-meter astral soul appeared behind him. His astral soul was akin to the astral soul of a heavenly deity, and as he attacked downwards, the heavens and earth trembled, wanting to destroy this entire space. At this moment, boundless attacks rained down on Jun Mengchen. However, Jun Mengchen roared in rage as boundless light manifested behind him. His roar shook the heavens and earth as a violent turbulence gushed forth, tearing apart everything, blocking all the incoming attacks. He's going berserk. Jun Mengchen is using that all-destroying energy again. Many immortal kings in the immortal banquet glanced at Jun Mengchen. Once this brat went berserk, there was no way to deal with him. Even someone as powerful as Tsang Ao was blasted off the platform with a single punch. He was simply too violent. The battle between Zi Qingxian and Yi Qianqian was also extremely fascinating. Zi Qingxian was like a divine falcon, her speed was as fast as lightning. However, Yi Qianqian's sword wasn't any slower than hers. Yi Qianqian was a pure sword cultivator. His sword arts were simply too exquisite. His astral souls and constellations were all born from the sword. In an instant, he could slash out over 100 sword beams, causing numerous sword scars to appear in the air, wanting to annihilate everyone before him. In addition, the might of each sword strike was extremely ferocious, as fast as lightning, or as explosive as thunder. Zi Qingshuan's speed and attacks were unleashed to the extreme. In this entire space, only her shadow remained. However, she was still suppressed by the sword light. Yi Qianqian's sword arts could be said to be perfect, impenetrable by wind and rain. Regardless of attack or defense, there were no flaws. When fighting against Yi Qianqian, one couldn't afford to be distracted for even the slightest moment. Sword cultivators reaped lives with a single sword strike, they wouldn't give their opponents any time to breathe. Qin Wentian hadn't found an opponent yet, but the rest of them were also aggressive and full of fighting spirit. Everyone was waiting with full concentration and going all out, not daring to make the slightest mistake. Ruthless eyes were filled with a terrifying baleful aura as he stared at Qin Wentian, who was guarding the two battles. Devilish qi surged from his body, giving others a feeling that he was terrifyingly powerful and extremely dangerous. The instant he stared at Qin Wentian immediately felt a stifling pressure as his battle intent gushed forth. After which, the devilish might from Ruthless surged as he walked towards Qin Wentian, step by step. Undefeatable Demon King's disciple Li is going to attack Qin Wentian. The spectators were still paying attention to Qin Wentian. His earlier performance could be said to be extremely outstanding, but in the first round of the final battle, he was ranked last. This battle would be his final chance to rise to the top. Buzz! A devil spear appeared in Ruthless' hand. Devilish might gushed forth as his aura towered up into the sky. On the surface of the devil spear, terrifying runic lights flickered, exuding an incomparably ferocious aura. The attacks of devil cultivators have always been violent and violent. Since they cultivate devil arts, their fleshly bodies are extremely strong and their combat prowess is extraordinary. Qin Wentian stared at Ruthless. He activated the battle art as beams of dazzling light radiated from him. In just an instant, Qin Wendian stood there, resembling an unshakable god of war as a fearsome battle might gushed forth, engulfing the heavens and earth. At the same time, the fiend god body refinement art was also circulated. The dazzling light from the sky demon oracle bones circulated around Qin Wendian's body, causing it to be even more dazzling and terrifying to the extreme. A long spear also appeared in Qin Wendian's hands, condensed from astral energy. The long spear in his hands also had terrifying runic lights circulating around it as a fearsome might gushed forth from it. A cold light flashed in Ruthless' eyes. He rushed out, rushing towards Qin Wendian. The devil spear in his hands directly blasted out, bringing with it a terrifying whistling sound as though the entire space was about to explode. The devil might gushed forth like a dragon, gushing forth. His devil spear had a fearsome might that could penetrate through everything. A towering devil might gathered in the surroundings, but at the same time, Qin Wendian's long spear also blasted out, aiming for Ruthless' long spear. The two long spears were like lightning, instantly colliding with each other. In just an instant, the two of them felt an extremely tyrannical force gushing forth. Die! Ruthless roared. His entire arm was covered in devil might as he blasted it towards the devil spear. Qin Wendian's arm trembled as a fearsome suppression might gushed forth. At the tip of the spear, a thunderous boom rang out. Ruthless actually took a step back, causing him to furrow his brows. However, at this moment, Qin Wendian stepped out and blasted out another spear strike. This spear strike was even faster and more ferocious, containing an irresistible force. Ruthless roared in rage. How could his devil spear retreat? He once again collided with Qin Wendian's spear. Another thunderous boom rang out as Ruthless retreated once again. The devil might gushing forth from him towered up into the sky as numerous ancient devils appeared in the air. Each of these ancient devils wielded a heaven-shaking spear in their hands, exuding an unexcelled aura. Qin Wendian similarly released his constellation. The suppression constellation frenziedly flowed into Qin Wendian's arm. Boom! Ruthless stomped the ground as the ancient devils in the air howled. In an instant, tens of thousands of devil silhouettes appeared, all of them wielding spears as they lunged towards Qin Wendian. This was simply chaos. They wanted to kill Qin Wendian here with a single strike. At the same time, Qin Wendian's silhouettes transformed into a million clones. The suppression astral soul in the air radiated boundless divine light, cascading downwards as the fiend god heavenly suppression art was unleashed to the extreme. The long spears in Qin Wendian's hands all pulsed with a towering suppression might. The millions of Qin Wendian's silhouettes similarly struck out with their spears. No matter what technique Ruthless used, Qin Wendian would directly counter it with a force similar to his. Spear against spear. Boundless suppressive light illuminated the area. When the devil might gushed downwards, that incomparably tyrannical heaven suppression spear art broke through the air. The collision this time shook the heavens and the earth. Frenzied destructive currents swept across the area. Ruthless felt as though he was being suppressed, his boundless devil might was being suppressed. With a thunderous boom, his body was flung backwards, the devil spear in his hand stabbed into the ground of the battle platform. Terrifying crackling sounds rang out as the devil spear slashed across the platform, causing sparks to appear. However, his body only stopped when he reached the edge of the platform as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. You have lost. Ruthless inclined his head, only to see the resplendent Qin Wendian pointing his spear at him as he coldly spoke, his stance extremely arrogant. I can still fight. Ruthless' voice was incomparably cold as devil might gushed forth from him, engulfing the heavens and earth. Even if you continue to fight, you will still lose. Qin Wendian roared as a supreme demonic might gushed forth from him. The aura of a monarch of the demonic Tao gushed forth, clashing against the devil might. Ruthless' eyes stared fixedly at Qin Wendian. He cultivated in devil arts and was extremely ferocious in his attacks. Yet, he was actually defeated. He felt extremely unwilling in his heart. Ruthless, the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King, will still be defeated. Although his devil arts are tyrannical, this Qin Wentian has already unleashed the third level of the undefeatable Devil King. In addition to his own strength, he's simply too terrifying. Everyone stared at Qin Wentian. He wielded his long spear and stood there, resembling a descendant of a demon king. At the same time, he also resembled a fearsome god of war, completely unshakable. Jun Mengchen's battle has also concluded. He erupted forth with that incomparably tyrannical and mystical energy as an ancient aura gushed forth from his body. Boundless energy congregated on him, the king of the heavenly god race, as he defeated Qin Ta. Qin Ta's strength was already extremely terrifying. In fact, when he attacked, there were traces of mystical law energy within, but he was still defeated by Jun Mengchen. At this moment, a shrill screech rang out from Zi Qingshuan's side. Yi Qianqin's swordplay forced Zi Qingxian to the extreme. She released her tyrannical bloodline and was akin to a divine falcon with golden flames, shuttling through the sword qi in a domineering manner. Her palms smashed out, similar to Yi Qianqin's swordplay. Although Yi Qianqin's swordplay was incomparably exquisite, he was still defeated by Zi Qingxian. All three of them won. The spectators were all taken aback when they saw this scene. Qin Wentian, Jun Mengchen, Zi Qingxian, all three of them launched their attacks at the same time. For the first battle, the three of them each fought against a genius and all of them won. Such a battle record was many times more dazzling compared to their previous rankings. Staring at the battle platform, Feather King fought against Mo1. Right now, the two of them were fighting intensely, extremely violent. Feather King was the king of the winged devil race of the Western Desert Prefecture. His attacks were extremely terrifying. Mo1 transformed into the Frost King and fought against him. Right now among the 10 geniuses, the only ones who didn't fight were Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu. The two of them didn't clash against each other, but battle intent radiated from them as they stared at the battles of the others. Senior brother. Jun Mengchen called out. You will fight against Yi Qianqin, Qingxian will fight against Qin Ta. Change fighters. Qin Wentian spoke. Right. Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian both nodded, as though they respected Qin Wentian's words. Jun Mengchen walked towards Yi Qianqin while Zi Qingxian walked towards Qin Ta. Bastard! Qin Ta roared in rage. Was he treating them as stepping stones? After Jun Mengchen defeated him, he changed fighters again. Yi Qianqin's countenance turned ashen. He was the number 1 genius of the Qian prefecture, a supreme swordsman. Qin Wentian actually allowed Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian to trample on them to prove themselves. This was simply a humiliation to them. Bzz. Sword qi engulfed the heavens and earth, growing even more violent. Yi Qianqin brandished his sword and walked towards Jun Mengchen. Qin Ta howled in rage, resembling a heavenly god as he stared at Zi Qingxian in the air. Fight! How arrogant, he wants to fight them one by one. The three of them want to challenge the other 7 geniuses to prove themselves, using this method to wash away the humiliation of their low rankings in the first 2 rounds. The eyes of the immortal kings shone brightly as they stared at Qin Wentian on the battle platform. Among the three of them, Qin Wentian seemed to be the leader. Jun Mengchen was arrogant and violent while Zi Qingxian was calm and solemn. However, the two of them were willing to listen to Qin Wentian's commands. As for Qin Wentian himself, he stood in the center of the platform. Earlier, he had already defeated Ruthless. Most probably, he would issue a challenge to Hua Taishu and Gusu Tianqi. Chapter 878. Jun Mengchen fought against Yi Qianqin while Zi Qingxian fought against Qin Ta. The two of them exchanged opponents. Feather King was still fighting against Mo1. Feather King was the youngest king of the winged devil race while Mo1 had the Frost King physique, akin to an ice goddess. Gusu Tianqi walked towards Ruthless, the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King. He, Gusu Tianqi, was first in the first round and second in the second round. For this final battle, if he was the first, he would eventually be the first. But if the first position was seized by Hua Taishu, he would have no chance to be the first. For this final battle, he had to obtain the first position no matter what. Fighting against Ruthless, the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King, was his first battle. From Gusu Tianqi, a scorching heat akin to the scorching sun radiated forth. In the air, numerous suns appeared, congregating in the center of the constellation furnace. This furnace seemed to be able to incinerate everything in the world, possessing an unparalleled destructive might. Ruthless devil might towered up into the sky. An ancient devil appeared, wielding a pitch-black devil spear, exuding an imposing aura. Gusu Tianqi stared at this devil with a calm expression. Since Qin Wentian could defeat Ruthless, how could he not do the same? If he wanted to be the first, he would trample Qin Wentian under his feet. It was just that from his perspective, Qin Wentian, Hua Taishu and Feather King, the threat they posed to him was much greater. On top of the furnace, an unparalleled divine light shot out. It was like a dazzling flame spear that could pierce through a person's body and kill them. Ruthless devil might gushed forth. With a wave of his hand, a fearsome pitch-black devil shield appeared, allowing the fiery spear to shoot towards him. Ruthless remained unmoving. Gusu Tianqi waved his palms in the air as the light from the 9 blazing suns frenziedly shot into the furnace. The furnace trembled violently as terrifying rumbling sounds could be heard. After which, within the furnace, a blazing long spear that resembled the sun slowly materialized, descending from the air and landing in Gusu Tianqi's hands. This long spear radiated boundless divine light as flames blazed around it. Stepping out, Gusu Tianqi's silhouette exploded forth as his long spear shot out. The terrifying sun spear penetrated through the heavens and earth, wanting to annihilate everything in its path. The ancient devil in the air howled in rage as numerous black spears erupted forth. However, when Gusu Tianqi's sun spear swept past, everything was destroyed. With a thunderous boom, the devil's shield shattered, and only when Ruthless and Gusu Tianqi's sun spear collided together did Ruthless manage to block the attack. However, they only saw Gusu Tianqi standing at his original location. A battle art manifested from his body as he waved his hands in the air. Instantly, numerous sun spears appeared from the terrifying furnace, causing people to feel a deep sense of awe and veneration. Against Gusu Tianqi, Ruthless was clearly defeated once again. The spectators mused as they watched on. Gusu Tianqi was simply too powerful, the #1 genius of the Eastern Prefecture. He had a single disciple for 9 generations, and every generation had immortal kings. Even the lowest achievement he had was at the immortal king realm, an innate king. Ruthless, the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King, although his potential was limitless and his combat prowess was tyrannical, he lost to Qin Wentian in the first battle. For the second battle, he would lose to Gusu Tianqi as well. There was no suspense. In this case, Ruthless no longer had any chance to enter the top 3. The battle between Feather King and Mo Wen is extremely intense. Some immortal kings turned their attention to another battle. In the 4 directions, 4 battles between geniuses started simultaneously, causing the spectators to be unable to take it all in. It was extremely fascinating. At this moment, Feather King seemed to be borrowing the astral energy from the starry space, resembling a devil king of the astral skies. His wings were incomparably dazzling, gleaming with terrifying runic inscriptions. Mo Wen floated in the air, akin to a goddess of ice and snow. Her coldness was completely unleashed as a world of ice and snow appeared in the air, fighting against Feather King. Jun Mengchen's combat style has always been the most direct. Yi Qianqin's sword strikes were exquisite, while Jun Mengchen used brute force to break his sword strikes. He transformed into a supreme king, letting out a roar of rage that caused the heavens and earth to tremble. His war chariot smashed through the air, akin to a chaotic flood of chaos, unexcelled in this world. Although Yi Qianqin's sword strikes were powerful, he was still in a precarious situation under that tyrannical attack. Zi Qingxian and Qin Ta's battle was equally fascinating. Zi Qingxian transformed into a divine hawk while Qin Ta was like a heavenly deity. In terms of offense, Zi Qingxian was clearly inferior to Jun Mengchen. She had no way to fight like Jun Mengchen, clashing head-on with Qin Ta. She could only use the advantage of the speed of the divine hawk to unceasingly launch attacks at Qin Ta. The speed of the golden flame divine hawk was simply too fast. This was especially so when Zi Qingxian unleashed her bloodline power, releasing divine might. The shadow of the golden flame divine hawk enveloped her entire body. In a single breath of time, she flapped her wings 100 times and transformed into a beam of light, unceasingly blasting out fearsome divine hawk beams. Qin Ta's heavenly deity form attacks would always pass right by her. Such a stifling battle caused Qin Ta to go berserk. The heavenly deity constellation in the air suppressed everything, wanting to bury this entire space. Zi Qingshuan's wings flapped as countless divine falcons appeared in the air, instantly shooting towards Qin Ta. Qin Ta let out a heaven-shaking roar as he blasted out with both his palms. The gigantic palm imprints blotted out the entire space, resembling a true heavenly god. Rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly as more and more condors flew towards the incoming palm imprints as though they were committing suicide. Another boom rang out as a terrifying golden flame condor slammed into Qin Ta's palm imprint. However, at this moment, the palm imprint was directly penetrated through as a beam of light shot towards Qin Ta's head. Qin Ta's countenance drastically changed. He hurriedly used his palms to protect his face, only to see that beam of light directly piercing through his chest, tearing out a piece of flesh and blood. When he opened his eyes, Qin Ta lowered his head and glanced at his injuries. After that, he inclined his head and stared at Zi Qingxian in the air as he spoke, "Your advantage in speed is too great. My attacks are definitely not inferior to yours. But you have lost." Zi Qingxian emotionlessly spoke. She only cared about the ending. "I have lost." Qin Ta's countenance turned ashen. He had lost 2 rounds consecutively. This was a humiliation. He had no fate with the top 3. At this moment, Yi Qianchen let out a roar of unwillingness. His body was flung through the air, similarly defeated by Jun Mengchen. Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen were both in extremely miserable states. The two of them were chosen by Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian, becoming stepping stones. Or more accurately, they were chosen by Qin Wentian. Naturally, there was no helping it. Qin Wentian and the other two had very low rankings in the first 2 rounds and were targeted by Dong Xingting. This was the final battle and they had to appear in the most domineering manner possible. Even if Dong Xingting's schemes caused them to be unable to stand among the top 3, at the very least, they had a clear conscience in their hearts. They did their best and did their best. For the top 10, they had no way to control the first 2 rounds. This final battle was the only thing they could control. Naturally, they had to do their best. No one would be able to obstruct them. "Senior brother." Jun Mengchen called out to Qin Wentian when he saw that Zi Qingshuan's battle had ended. How should they fight next? At this moment, Qin Wentian noticed that the battle between Feather King and Mo Wen had also ended. Their battle could be said to be heaven-shaking and extremely intense. At the end, Mo Wen, a disciple of the Heavenly Talisman Realm, was defeated by the number 1 genius of the Western Desert Prefecture, the young king of the winged devil race, Feather King. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with sharpness. The 2 battles between Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian were already sufficient to leave a deep impression on the spectators. Next, to Jun Mengchen, he needed a victory of a heavyweight level. "Mengchen, you will fight Feather King." Feather King had already defeated Mo Wen. In addition, Feather King would definitely fight Ruthless next. As long as Jun Mengchen ended this heavyweight battle and defeated Feather King, his remaining opponents would only be Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu. As for the others, he could directly ignore them. There was no need for him to clash with Mo Wen. Right. Jun Mengchen's eyes flickered with excitement. Fighting Feather King. He naturally could tell that Feather King was one of the strongest existences in the top 10. This battle caused him to be extremely excited. How arrogant! The spectators at the Immortal Banquet all sighed in admiration. Qin Wentian's battle actually allowed Jun Mengchen to challenge Feather King. How tyrannical! Feather King stared at Jun Mengchen walking towards him. His countenance flashed with sharpness as the violet gold wings on his back fluttered. Dazzling runic patterns could be seen on the surface of his wings. His wings were like an invincible divine weapon. Earlier when he fought against Mo Wen, his wings gave Mo Wen an immense sense of threat. Qing Xian, you will fight ruthless. Qin Wendian spoke to Zi Qingxian. Right. Zi Qingxian nodded as she walked towards the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King. Ruthless, he already had 2 defeats on him. This fellow, it seems that the final battle of the top 10 will be decided by him alone. The spectators stared at Qin Wendian. He stood there and watched as Jun Mengchen attacked Feather King while Zi Qingxian challenged Ruthless. In the blink of an eye, the 2 battles had become extremely violent. This was especially so for the battle between Feather King and Jun Mengchen. Both of them were like kings. Feather King's violet gold wings flashed as he continuously attacked, exuding an aura akin to thunder. Jun Mengchen roared in rage, causing the entire space to tremble. Qin Wendian's countenance was calm as he watched the battle between the 4 of them. He couldn't see through Mengchen's trump card, but he knew that it was definitely extremely powerful. It was like he could borrow a supreme power to augment himself. Although Feather King was very strong, Qin Wendian believed that Jun Mengchen would be able to win against him. He had already tested Ruthless' combat prowess. Although Ruthless was powerful, Zi Qingxian should be able to win as well. As for himself, he naturally couldn't fall behind. He stepped back and stared at Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen. The 2 of them were also coldly staring at him, their eyes flickering with an intense anger. Are you angry? Qin Wendian glanced at the 2 of them and spoke, if you are angry then come at me together. Although the rules don't allow us to gang up on each other, I'm willing to fight against the 2 of you. None of you will be a match for me if you fight alone. Boom. As the sound of Qin Wendian's voice faded, Qin Ta stomped the ground ruthlessly. With a howl of rage, the entire space trembled. Yi Qianchen was like a heavenly god descending from the heavens as a towering storm of sword qi manifested around him. They were all geniuses of the top 10, but Qin Wendian was arrogant enough to tell the 2 of them to fight together. One of them wouldn't be a match for him. Chapter 879. You are truly arrogant. Qin Ta's voice was hoarse. His body expanded to 10 meters in size, resembling a heavenly deity as he stared down at Qin Wendian. Behind him, the shadow of a 10,000-meter tall heavenly deity could be seen, capable of crushing all living things. Qin Ta was the 2nd ranker of the Western Desert Prefecture, a genius from the heavenly deity race. On the day of the final battle, he suffered 2 consecutive defeats. Right now, Qin Wendian was arrogant enough to challenge the 2 of them. Boundless sword might revolved around Yi Qianchen as he walked step by step towards Qin Wendian. Their rankings in the first 2 rounds weren't high, but weren't they filled with an intense battle intent as well? They wanted to prove themselves in this final battle. This way, even if they couldn't enter the tutelage of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, they would still have a chance to be accepted as a personal disciple by a powerful immortal king. But now, he had become the target of Qin Wendian's trampling. The 2 of them actually planned to gang up on Qin Wendian. This was something Qin Wendian had said himself. At the immortal banquet, all the experts present would bear witness. In that case, Qin Wendian would pay a price for his actions. Boom! Resplendent light circulated around Qin Wendian's body as runes flowed on it. It was as though he was clad in a demonic armor. His body expanded to 10 meters in size, similar to Qin Ta. Behind him, a pair of dazzling golden rock wings could be seen flickering unceasingly. Every time they flapped, a strong gust of wind would be generated, tearing apart the void. A violet gold astral soul flashed as his suppression constellation manifested in the air, exuding boundless might. His right hand wielded a sharp sword that gleamed with blood-colored light. He was like a king wielding a sword, looking down on the world. Runic light flowed around his left palm, exuding a fearsome might. Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen closed in step by step. When they sensed the might radiating from Qin Wentian, their countenances grew colder and colder. At this moment, Qin Wentian activated his battle art. His already dazzling body once again shone with a dazzling light. It was as if his body had metamorphosed and he had turned into a battle king. Boom, boom, boom. After consecutively activating the third level of the battle art, the Qin Wentian now truly seemed like a supreme king. Nobody could shake him. Even the heavenly divine like Qin Wentian felt a stifling pressure from him. As for Yi Qianchen, the hand he used to wield his sword was filled with doubt. He was doubting if the sword in his hand would be able to contend against the king's sword in Qin Wentian's hand. Only when they truly faced Qin Wentian would they be able to clearly sense how strong Qin Wentian was. When Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen saw Qin Wentian's trump cards being unleashed unceasingly, they didn't seem as confident as before. This person dared to say that the two of them would attack together. Was it really just a moment of impulse? However, given such a situation, they could only fight. Qin Ta blasted out with his palm as the shadow of a heavenly divinity appeared. At this instant, the entire space was enveloped by it. This palm seemed to contain the power to lock down the void, causing one to feel that the existence of this palm was extremely powerful. Ordinary characters on the same level as them wouldn't be able to break free at all and would be directly killed. Just like how Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen could only sense how strong Qin Wentian was when they were facing him, it was the same for them as well. Only when Qin Wentian was facing them would he be able to sense the profoundness and profundity contained within each of their attacks. Qin Wentian's left hand blasted out without hesitation. He didn't evade and chose to attack head-on. His palm circulated with a dazzling runic light. This palm strike seemed to contain the pinnacle of strength, capable of annihilating everything. Almost at the same time, Yi Qianchen's silhouette flickered. His movements were graceful and elegant, as fast as lightning. He directly slashed out with his sword, causing a thunderous sword light to shoot up from below. A beam of destructive light appeared, capable of directly cleaving people into two. Qin Wentian directly lifted his hand and slashed out. Although his sword seemed slow, at the instant he slashed out, sword light erupted forth, slashing apart the void and actually collided perfectly with Yi Qianchen's sword. Palms collided, sword slashed sword. Rumbling sounds rang out as the battle directly erupted. Rumble. Qin Ta directly stomped on the platform, moving towards Qin Wentian. Yi Qianchen's silhouette closed in, wanting to get close to Qin Wentian. However, Qin Wentian's wings abruptly flashed as a golden light flashed. He transformed into a wind rock and directly vanished from sight. Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen inclined their heads at the same time. After that, they only saw Qin Wentian transforming into a bolt of golden lightning, akin to a great sage wind rock, moving like the wind. His palms slashed out in rage, directly pressing towards Qin Ta while the sword in his right hand slashed out consecutively, blasting towards Yi Qianchen. Just like how he used his spear arts to deal with ruthless spear arts, he used his strength to deal with Qin Ta's strength, and used his sword to deal with Yi Qianchen's sword. This was no longer a simple battle, he was letting everyone witness his strength, using his strongest stance to appear on the battlefield, silencing those people who doubted his performance in the first two rounds. Boom! At the instant Qin Ta and Qin Wentian collided, this time, it was a direct clash of palms. Qin Ta was an expert from the heavenly god race and knew that his strength was unparalleled. But when his palms collided with Qin Wentian's, he could clearly feel a terrifying pressure. Qin Wentian's palms seemed indestructible, containing boundless might within them. With just a single strike, Qin Wentian's silhouette vanished once more. Qin Ta didn't even have the time to send out his other palm imprint. Qin Wentian floated in the air as a violet gold light cascaded down from him. Numerous golden figures appeared in the air, resembling divinities. I've said it before, you guys aren't my match. Qin Wentian faintly spoke. After that, his silhouette flickered as he directly soared up into the sky, transforming into an incomparably resplendent beam of golden light. In an instant, it was unknown how high he had reached. Rumble. An instant later, the sound of thunder thundered through the air, so deafening that it felt as though the entire sky was trembling. At this moment, the experts inclined their heads and stared at the sky. The rumbling sounds grew louder and louder, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. Over there seemed to be an incomparably resplendent beam of golden light. Rumble. An even more terrifying sound could be heard. The eyes of the crowd froze. They saw an incomparably gigantic silhouette. It was incomparably magnificent and gigantic. It was hundreds of meters tall and it swooped down at a terrifying speed like a golden bolt of lightning. Not only was it fast, the strength it exuded caused everyone to feel as though it was the end of the world. Qin Ta's body was like a heavenly deity, but at this moment, his eardrums were trembling unceasingly. Staring at that incomparably gigantic silhouette that was getting closer and closer, his heart was pounding. Would he be able to withstand this attack? Yi Qianqian's heart was pounding as well. At this moment, they saw many illusory figures appearing in the air. It was as though there were hundreds of Qin Wentian appearing, blotting out the entire sky. These were all Qin Wentian's illusory figures, and at this moment, it felt as though even the heavens and earth were about to be destroyed. Arg! Qin Ta let out a howl of agony. It felt like his will was about to collapse. Even during the test of his will earlier, he didn't feel so much despair. He had already lost 2 rounds, he couldn't afford to lose again. For this battle, Qin Wentian was challenging the 2 of them, he had to win no matter what. However, when he saw the supreme attack that was about to descend from the sky, how could he win? How could he win? Facing such an attack, would he be able to preserve his life? I concede. Qin Ta roared. Despite how powerful he was, he actually took the initiative to concede, not daring to continue fighting. This roar seemed to have shattered Yi Qianqian's conviction. When he saw that overwhelming attack about to land on him, he also roared, I concede. As the sound of Yi Qianqian's voice faded, the numerous illusory figures transformed into one. From afar, a rumbling sound rang out. That was Qin Wentian unleashing his attack. Bzz. The raging wind howled. Qin Wentian's body actually halted abruptly, floating in the air. He transformed back to his 100-meter tall form, with a pair of terrifying wings. That incomparably tyrannical attack was forcibly halted by him. He cast a glance at Qin Ta and Yi Qianqian below. The purpose of this battle has already been achieved. Before this, he defeated Ruthless, the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King. In this battle, he defeated both Qin Ta and Yi Qianqian. In this case, there were already 3 people who were defeated by him. Before him, only Gusu Tianqi, Hua Taishu, Feather King, and Mo Wen remained. How powerful! This final battle seems to have become the world of the 3 of them. They are in a hurry to prove themselves, wanting to wash away the humiliation of being ranked lower than them. The hearts of the spectators trembled when they saw Qin Wentian forcing 2 of the top 10 geniuses to concede. How terrifying was this? Right now, there weren't many who could stop Qin Wentian. Maybe, Gusu Tianqi would really have to act. Also, there was Hua Taishu whose performance was on par with Gusu Tianqi earlier. From the start of the final battle until now, he had yet to make a move. He should also be extremely powerful, right? No one knew if he would be able to stop Qin Wentian's footsteps. Qin Wentian then turned his gaze onto the battle between Jun Mengchen and Feather King, as well as the battle between Zi Qingxian and Ruthless. The battle had already reached the climax. Feather King had already used all of his trump cards, while Jun Mengchen was incomparably magnificent, causing even Qin Wentian to feel fear in his heart. Right now, Jun Mengchen floated in the air as a piece of clear sky appeared behind him. Or perhaps, it could be said that it was a world of its own. That was a diagram of the clear sky world and everything within it could actually move. It was as though the energy within the diagram was something that Jun Mengchen could control. Boom! A stifling pressure abruptly engulfed the heavens and earth. Numerous immortal kings stood up from their seats as they stared in shock at the transformation that was happening to Jun Mengchen. Heavens, this is... Even the undying immortal king who had lived for countless years couldn't help but exclaim in shock as he stared at Jun Mengchen. Undying immortal king. Many turned their gazes onto the undying immortal king as looks of bewilderment appeared on their faces. Their eyes gleamed with sharpness as a look of inquiry could be seen on their faces. There's no mistake, it must be him. Such a character actually came to participate in this immortal banquet. The eyes of the undying immortal king gleamed with sharpness. Dong Xingting's eyes also gleamed with sharpness. In fact, beside him, Princess Lioli also stood up as her beautiful eyes gleamed with sharpness. Her father, the person the White Emperor was searching for, was this man? Right now, his attacks are still very simple. I'm afraid he still doesn't know what potential he has. Congratulations to your majesty, this time around, you are truly going to accept a good disciple. The undying immortal king was filled with envy. This time around, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor had truly picked up a precious disciple. How laughable, Dongxing Ting was still making things difficult for him earlier. Chapter 880. Qin Wentian was somewhat bewildered. The phenomenon that appeared on Jun Mengchen's body actually startled all the immortal kings here. Many of them stood up. Clearly, the phenomenon displayed by Jun Mengchen had shocked them. Seems like junior brother Jun is also extraordinary. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice. Most of the people here were immortal kings. To these ancient immortal kings, although they were geniuses with extraordinary talent, there was only a possibility that they could step into the immortal king realm one day. Immortal kings were supreme existences. Celestial phenomenon ascendants were simply too weak. No matter how outstanding one's talent was, it wasn't enough to cause the immortal kings to be too shocked. Hence, from the start till the end, these immortal kings all maintained a calm attitude, watching the selection battle unfold. Very few of them were startled. In addition, the Deep Flame Immortal King was a lofty existence. Although his three fellow apprentices all had outstanding talent, the Deep Flame Immortal King still acted in a domineering manner. Because, although their talent was outstanding, there was only a possibility that they could step into the Immortal King realm. But at this instant, all the immortal kings actually stood up in unison because of how extraordinary Jun Mengchen was. What did this mean? Did this mean that Jun Mengchen's future achievements had a very high possibility of surpassing the immortal king realm? After the immortal kings recovered from their shock, they returned to their seats. After all, they were supreme existences. It was fine for them to lose their composure occasionally, but they could instantly regain their composure. Although they were seated, their eyes still gleamed with sharpness as they stared at the battle in the air. Dongxing Ting was also staring at Jun Mengchen, ignoring the battle between Jun Mengchen and Feather King. It was like that wasn't so important anymore. He also didn't expect that he would see such a legendary phenomenon from Jun Mengchen today. In this case, all the things he did to Jun Mengchen earlier, had instead smashed his own foot with a rock. Since such a character had appeared, his father would definitely accept him as a personal disciple. Jun Mengchen had to enter the top 3 no matter what. Just now, he actually used some underhanded means to stop Jun Mengchen from advancing to the top 3. That was truly laughable. Forget it. Since that's the case, this fellow is worth cultivating. After father takes him in as a personal disciple, I'll ask him to cut off all ties with Qin Wentian. I believe he'll know what to do then. Dongxing Ting silently speculated in his heart. In front of absolute temptation, let alone ordinary fellow apprentices, even master and disciple might fall out with each other. If his father was willing to nurture Jun Mengchen with all his might, so what if he wanted to sever his relationship with Qin Wentian? Didn't they attend the immortal banquet in search of an opportunity? Now, he was willing to give this opportunity to Jun Mengchen. At this time, the outcome of the battle was finally decided. After Jun Mengchen revealed his powerful trump card, even the tyrannical Feather King was unable to withstand his attack. Feather King was defeated. Feather King's wings flapped as he floated in the air. Traces of blood could be seen on his body as his aura fluctuated wildly. He inclined his head and stared at the incomparably dazzling Jun Mengchen with a trace of reluctance in his heart. However, Jun Mengchen's attack power was simply too terrifying, he had no way to defend against it. On the platform of the final battle, he was defeated for the first time. Not only that, in the previous 2 rounds, he didn't even manage to enter the top 2. One was ranked number 3 and the other was ranked number 4. In this case, it was already extremely dangerous for him to obtain the top 3 rankings. For the following battles, he could only win all of them before he could enter the top 3. Even if he lost one more battle, it would still be an opportunity. In this case, junior apprentice brother Jun only needs to fight 2 more battles. They are against Hua Taishu and Gusu Tianqi. Qin Wentian silently mused. Just at this moment, Jun Mengchen's gaze turned in his direction. Jun Mengchen, who was clad in king armor, exuded an unexcelled aura. When he stared at Qin Wentian, a smile could be seen in his eyes as he called out, "Senior brother. Let's take a break, there are only a few battles left for us to fight." Qin Wentian spoke. Jun Mengchen nodded his head as he retracted his aura. However, the atmosphere in the banquet wasn't very calm. It seemed that because of Jun Mengchen, a huge storm had erupted. "Your Highness, this young man's strength is sufficient to enter the top 3. His earlier performances might be inferior, but since this is a selection battle, it's only a matter of time. Given the halo around him, there's no way he would be able to enter the top 3. Beside Dongxing Ting, a supreme immortal king from the Dongshengshan Gate spoke. Although his words were vague, he was hinting to Dongxing Ting that this Jun Mengchen had to enter the top 3 no matter what. If not, even if the Dongxing Heaven Emperor didn't accept him as a disciple, he wouldn't have joined the Dongshengshan Gate. Many of the supreme immortal kings here would send voice transmissions to recruit him. Naturally, the one he feared the most was none other than Princess Liuli. Princess Liuli came to participate in the immortal banquet organized by the Dongshengshan Gate. Nobody knew what her purpose was, but since Jun Mengchen displayed the legendary phenomenon, how could Princess Liuli as the daughter of the White Emperor not know? If Jun Mengchen didn't enter the top 3, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor wouldn't directly accept him as a disciple. In fact, Princess Liuli might even interfere and recruit this supreme genius for the sake of her father, the White Emperor, or more accurately, for the sake of the Chongqing the Great. His talent is truly not bad. Let's see how he performs next. We can indeed consider him as one of the top 3 rankers. Dongxing Ting nodded. Everyone instantly understood that Dongxing Ting intended for Jun Mengchen to enter the top 3. Your Highness. At this moment, Princess Liuli turned her gaze over as a faint smile flickered in her eyes. Although it was a smile, there was a hint of mysteriousness in it. Before this, Jun Mengchen's performance in the first 2 rounds of the Immortal Banquet was the 6th and the 7th. Such a performance doesn't seem to be anything special. If he performs well in the last round, would he still be able to enter the top 3? Princess Liuli asked. Princess's words are indeed what I'm considering. The purpose of this Immortal Banquet is to select the 3 most outstanding geniuses for my father to accept as his personal disciples. Although this young man wasn't outstanding enough in the first 2 rounds, as long as his performance in the last round is dazzling enough, why wouldn't he be able to enter the top 3? Dongxing Ting's voice resonated through the air as he spoke. In that case, the performance of this young man's senior brother, Qin Wentian, isn't in any way inferior to Jun Mengchen. If Jun Mengchen enters the top 3, would Qin Wentian be considered as well? Princess Liuli turned her gaze over to Gu Zhantian as a meaningful smile appeared on her face. If Dongxing Ting only chose Jun Mengchen and not Qin Wentian, wouldn't that be unfair? Hence, we still need to see how they perform next. If Qin Wentian's performance is outstanding, he can also enter the top 3. Dongxing Ting spoke. Princess Liuli didn't say anything more. Gusu Tianqi, Hua Taishu, Jun Mengchen, and Qin Wentian. In addition to the powerful Feather King, there were only 3 spots for the top 3 rankers. She really wanted to see how Dongxing Ting would choose. On the battle platform, the battles continued unceasingly. Zi Qingxian defeated Ruthless, causing the expression of the undefeatable Devil King to turn incredibly unsightly. After the start of the final battle, his disciple Ruthless was defeated consecutively, not even winning a single battle. As the master of the undefeatable Devil King, he couldn't hold any face at all. However, this also proved how strong these geniuses were. Even for the disciple of the undefeatable Devil King, Ruthless, he didn't have much of an advantage and was defeated by numerous people. The competition was simply too intense. On the battle platform, Mo1 and Yi Qianchen also started fighting. From the looks of it, Yi Qianchen might be defeated again. He, the number one genius of the Qian prefecture, was now an existence that could be trampled on by others. In fact, Gusu Tianqi also started searching for a battle platform. He defeated Ruthless and walked towards Qin Ta, Qin Wendian and Hua Taishu. What they did, he would do the same. To Gusu Tianqi, being number one was his only goal. One could very well imagine the pressure Qin Ta felt when facing Gusu Tianqi. He was the same as Yi Qianchen, in a very tragic situation. Up till now, he didn't even win a single battle. Seems like for this final battle, Ruthless, Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen are destined to be ranked at the bottom. Their overall ranking wouldn't be able to enter the top 5. The spectators mused silently. This was already destined. In addition, it was already destined that many people wouldn't be able to become one of the top 3 rankers. Other than the 3 of them, Mo1 also had no hope. Even for someone as powerful as Feather King, his chances were extremely slim. Right now, Feather King was staring in the direction of Qin Wendian. His eyes flickered with an intense battle intent, as though he wanted to fight against Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian also saw him. However, Qin Wendian's countenance was indifferent, without a trace of emotion. It was as though Feather King wasn't an opponent he wanted to fight against. Feather King also noticed Qin Wendian's gaze. He walked towards Qin Wendian step by step, his countenance incomparably lofty. His violet gold wings flickered, exuding a terrifying might. Step aside. Qin Wendian glanced at Feather King as he emotionlessly spoke. Bzz. Feather King's wings flickered as he rushed out like a raging wind. In an instant, he appeared before Qin Wendian. He lifted his palms and blasted out, akin to a terrifying sharp claw that tore apart space. Qin Wendian coldly snorted. He lifted his right hand and launched an attack, causing the ancient bell chimes to reverberate unceasingly. At this instant, numerous ancient bells blasted out unceasingly, causing rumbling sounds to shake the heavens and earth. Feather King roared in rage, wanting to crush Qin Wendian with a single strike. The ancient bell chimes rang out unceasingly. Beams of calamity light slammed into Feather King, causing his soul to tremble. Qin Wendian's entire body was enveloped by an intense battle halo. When Feather King stared at Qin Wendian, all he saw was a dazzling battle halo. Bang! Finally, Feather King could no longer withstand the unceasing attacks of the ancient bells. With a flap of his wings, he retreated while Qin Wendian stood at his original location, coldly staring at him. Qing Xian, do your best to win this battle. Qin Wendian spoke. Qing Xian walked over and stood opposite of Feather King. A pair of divine falcon wings appeared on her back as well, gleaming with a dazzling light. Feather King's eyes narrowed. Qin Wendian wanted Qing Xian to fight against him. As for Qin Wendian himself, it seemed that he couldn't be bothered to fight against him. After Qin Wendian swept through a few people, he felt that there was no longer a need to use Feather King to establish his might. Right now, his gaze was no longer on Feather King. Boom! Feather King's aura towered up into the sky. After being defeated by Jun Mengchen, Qin Wendian actually refused to fight against him. How much contempt was this? Chapter 881. Feather King and Qing Xian both had a pair of wings on their backs. Their violet gold wings shone resplendently, incomparably resplendent. The two of them instantly clashed against each other, and in just an instant, violet gold light filled the air, clashing countless times. Their attacks are both so fast, not only that, they are also extremely powerful. The hearts of the spectators trembled. Every time the two of them attacked, the air would tremble, and a storm would sweep out. In just a short while, a terrifying tornado had actually gathered around them. This cylindrical violet-gold tornado swept through the air and rose up. The two of them also rose up along with the tornado, continuing to fight towards the sky. Even the gazes of the spectators were directed upwards, watching the shocking battle. If Feather King can't win this battle, he would have no chance at all. Before him, there's still Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu, and now there's even a Jun Mengchen. Qin Wentian didn't even bother to fight against him. From this, one could very well imagine the pressure Feather King is under. An immortal king spoke in a low voice. The top 10 geniuses were simply too terrifying. Leaving aside the dazzling Gusu Tianqi, as well as the low-profile Hua Taishu, Jun Mengchen, and Qin Wentian, which one of them would be weak? Qin Ta from the heavenly god race, who was as tyrannical as a heavenly deity, as well as Yi Qianchen with his supreme sword arts, both of them actually became existences at the bottom of the top 10. There was also the young king of the sky devil race, Feather King. First, he was defeated by Jun Mengchen. Gusu Tianqi and Qin Wentian didn't even treat him as an opponent. This was simply too crazy. Those immortal kings also sighed in admiration. Being able to see so many outstanding juniors fighting against each other was an extremely interesting thing. It was like seeing themselves back then. Very swiftly, Gusu Tianqi defeated Qin Ta, Mo Wen defeated Yi Qianchen. Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen were destined to be ranked at the bottom, not having a single victory. It wasn't that they weren't strong, but rather, their opponents were simply too terrifying. The battles continued. Other than Hua Taishu, who hadn't participated yet, the others were all fighting with all their might. Myriad incarnations, immortal king, this disciple of yours doesn't seem to be interested in fame. The undying old immortal king spoke to the beautiful immortal king. Hua Taishu hadn't even fought a single battle. Even if he entered the top 3, I'm still reluctant to see him enter the tutelage of His Majesty. In addition, since he walked out from the world of reincarnation, his temperament is naturally different from others. Hence, what he wants is different from others. The myriad incarnations immortal king laughed. The undying immortal king nodded his head. This was indeed the case. Everyone who stepped onto the battle platform had their own goals. Gusu Tianqi's name shook the entire Eastern Prefecture. He wanted to prove himself with a single battle, becoming the top ranker of the Eastern Prefecture, continuing the glory of his ancestors. As for the other geniuses, there were those who wanted to become disciples of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, and there were also geniuses who wanted to attract the attention of the supreme existences of the Dongshengshan Gate. All of them had their own goals. Only Hua Taishu was different. No one knew what he was thinking. The tempest of battle continued. Feather King and Ziqingxuan's battle grew more and more terrifying. Their battle in the air could be said to be world-shaking. Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen were both spectating. Hua Taishu and Gusu Tianqi were also spectating. The four of them seemed to have nothing to do. Hua Taishu's gaze slowly turned over, landing on Qin Wentian. His countenance was as calm as ever, as though nothing could affect him. It seems like there's really a predestined relationship between us. Hua Taishu smiled at Qin Wentian. His smile was extremely natural, exuding a carefree aura. There wasn't the slightest bit of hatred in it. Qin Wentian stared at Hua Taishu. He also smiled and nodded his head. When I was 16, I met you. At that time, you were already the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings. After that, I also obtained the same fame as you. After that, we met again in the immortal martial realm. Maybe it's like what you said, it's just that our predestined relationship is lacking a battle. That's exactly what I was thinking. Hua Taishu smiled at Qin Wentian. On the battle platform, the only thing I wanted to do was to fight against you. Now, are you prepared? Qin Wentian nodded. The two of them stood facing each other. At this instant, it was as though only the two of them were left on the battle platform. This was a battle that belonged to them, a battle that should have happened a long time ago. It's just that the battle had been delayed until today. The various immortal kings stared at the two of them as bewildered expressions appeared on their faces. From the conversation between Hua Taishu and Qin Wentian, it seemed like they were already acquainted with each other. At that time, Qin Wentian was only 16 years old. How interesting! However, the myriad incarnations immortal king and the undying immortal king weren't surprised. They knew that Qin Wentian and Hua Taishu came from the same particle world. Given their talent, it was only natural for them to have interacted with each other in their particle world. Hua Taishu is about to battle against Qin Wentian. This battle is extremely important. Hua Taishu's earlier performance, being first in the first round and second in the second round. His probability of entering the top 3 was the same as Gusu Tianqi. If he defeated Qin Wentian, there was no doubt that he would be one of the top 3. After all, Qin Wentian had already defeated several people. But what if Qin Wentian defeated Hua Taishu? Would Dongxing Ting allow a supreme genius who was ranked last in the first round to enter the top 3? This battle caused everyone to be filled with anticipation. Jun Mengchen and Gusu Tianqi both stood there, staring at Qin Wentian and Hua Taishu. The two of them were also filled with anticipation, wondering who would be the victor. Jun Mengchen naturally believed in Qin Wentian. Although they were tricked in the first 2 rounds, causing their rankings to be bad, for this final battle, they definitely had to shock everyone, trampling on the geniuses. Who would dare to doubt them? Even if the top 3 rankings weren't given to them, they would have no regrets. They had already done their best and didn't let down the expectations of the heavenly talisman realm. Even if they didn't pass the test, that was their fate. The spectators only saw Hua Taishu and Qin Wentian standing there, incomparably calm. In fact, they didn't even move at all. The only strange thing was that in the center of Qin Wentian's brows, a dazzling beam of light could be seen shooting out from it. In the airspace above him, a dreamlike scene appeared, the dream world constellation. The two of them who didn't seem to have exchanged blows had already started their battle. The two of them entered an illusory space. This was Qin Wentian's dream world constellation, which was also Hua Taishu's illusory space. Hua Taishu's eyes were capable of combat. This point had already been proven before, no one would doubt it. His master was the myriad incarnations immortal king who was proficient in illusions. Hua Taishu himself had also entered the world of reincarnation and exited it safely. He didn't die, nor did he go insane. The two of them were now in an independent space. Here, there was the dream world constellation, yet there were many Hua Taishu's silhouettes flickering unceasingly. An illusory space. In the earlier battle, Hua Taishu also used the same method, causing his opponent to have no way to retaliate. Qin Wentian silently mused. In this illusory space, any Hua Taishu's silhouettes could be nothing but illusions. Numerous Hua Taishu's silhouettes walked towards Qin Wentian. All of them wielded long spears in their hands and one of them directly stabbed out with his spear, aiming for Qin Wentian. This spear strike contained a terrifying might within. Qin Wentian waved his hands as a fearsome light circulated within his palms, directly shattering the spear. That silhouette directly disintegrated, as though it was nothing but an illusion. Bzz. Yet another attack blasted over. Qin Wentian responded with yet another palm strike, this time it was still an illusion. The spectators in the outside world only saw Qin Wentian attacking unceasingly under the effects of the constellation, causing them to feel fear in their hearts. Hua Taishu's illusory arts were simply too powerful. Qin Wentian had clearly already fallen into a trap. However, at this moment, the spectators saw boundless sword might radiating from Qin Wentian. That was a terrifying storm of sword chi as the sword slaughter constellation was unleashed. Within the illusory space, the sword slashed out, tearing apart numerous Hua Taishu silhouettes. However, new illusions appeared unceasingly, as though there would be no end to this. In front of him, yet another spear strike shot over. This spear strike contained a terrifying might within. Qin Wentian stared at the incoming long spear as countless illusions appeared in his mind. In front of him, there was no one attacking him. Now, it was as though he was back in the Sky Harmony city of Chu. Snowflakes drifted down from the sky, and Mo Qingcheng was clad in a pure white robe, resembling a celestial maiden as she stared back at him amidst the drifting snow. In just an instant, numerous scenes appeared in his mind, as though he was experiencing it in reality. Not good. Qin Wentian's sense of vigilance was extremely strong. His aura abruptly erupted forth as he unleashed his battle art. His bloodline power surged as he roared in rage. Momentarily, the chimes of ancient bells rang out as he blasted out with both his palms. Terrifying rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly as a long spear gleaming with destructive light flashed past. Qin Wentian saw the calm expression in Hua Taishu's eyes. That's his true body. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. His true body was fused with the millions of illusions, and his spear strike contained a powerful illusory art that could directly affect the will of his opponent. In an instant, it would cause other scenes to appear in his opponent's mind. At this moment, the true killing intent of Hua Taishu bore down on him. How terrifying was this killing move? In the illusory space, millions of illusory figures flickered. It was impossible to tell which one was real and which was fake. Hua Taishu's ability was different from the others, but the danger he posed was extremely high. If it wasn't for his firm will earlier, he would have already been defeated. If it was someone else, Hua Taishu could kill his opponent with a single strike if he wanted to. Everything is an illusion, it's impossible to break it with one's will alone. An immortal king sighed in admiration. Hua Taishu's illusory arts were extremely powerful. Among the 10 geniuses, which of them could break it? Qin Wentian could also sense that this type of illusory technique wasn't something that could be broken through by someone with a powerful will. His body glowed with a faint white light, and an instant later, a pure white holy flame ignited around him. Runic inscriptions flowed around his body, and this flame congregated in the third eye in the center of his brows. At this instant, even his eyes turned white. White flames could be seen burning in his eyes, extremely terrifying to the extreme. Bzz, bzz, bzz. Those illusory figures directly ignited, burning under the fearsome gaze of his eyes. From an illusory figure, they turned into an illusory figure. Chapter 882. Hua Taishu's abilities were unique. If one wanted to defeat him, they couldn't simply rely on their attacks. First, they had to break through the illusions. Only by breaking through Hua Taishu's illusions would they have a chance to defeat him. If not, they wouldn't even know where Hua Taishu was. How could they even fight? Qin Wentian's eyes were infused with the power of a second bloodline. Both his eyes shone with white runic light. Numerous Hua Taishu silhouettes were directly engulfed in flames, turning illusory. One after another, Hua Taishu's silhouettes shot towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian inclined his head only to see that the silhouettes were all engulfed in flames, unable to advance any further. In the surrounding space, more and more Hua Taishu's silhouettes appeared, but all of them were engulfed in flames, transforming into beams of illusory light. Hua Taishu's true body appeared before Qin Wentian, so clear and distinct. However, at this moment, Hua Taishu's eyes were also changing. His eyes seemed to be able to revolve, resembling an incomparably deep vortex that could swallow people within. In fact, runic light could even be seen flickering in his eyes. Instantly, an even stronger illusion appeared. Qin Wentian couldn't shift his gaze away even if he wanted to. That pair of eyes was deeply imprinted into his mind. In his mind, many illusions appeared. Not only in his mind, there were even many silhouettes appearing before his eyes. There was the silhouette of Qing Heir, Mo Qingcheng, Uncle Black. It was as though everything he had experienced in the past flashed before his eyes, causing Qin Wentian to sink into the illusions once more. These two, those immortal kings, were all stunned. That pair of terrifying eyes seemed to be a battle of eye techniques. Myriad incarnations, what about your disciple Hua Taishu's eyes? The undying immortal king stared at the beautiful immortal king as he asked. He cultivated this out himself, I merely played a supporting role. This was something he experienced in the samsara world, experiencing 9 lives of samsara before he had a fortuitous encounter. This pair of eyes can cause people to sink into samsara. No matter how many things you have experienced in the past, it can allow you to recall them, and even create other reincarnation illusions. For those with weak wills, they wouldn't even be able to withstand a single strike from this pair of eyes. The myriad incarnations immortal king spoke with a hint of arrogance. Hua Taishu's achievements weren't simply because she was his master. A master was only there to guide him. The most important thing for cultivation was to depend on oneself. Hua Taishu's eyes were something that even she, an immortal king, had no way to achieve. The world of reincarnation is known as the Forbidden Land. As expected, the opportunities here are great. You really dare to let him enter? The undying immortal king sighed. There were some forbidden grounds in the immortal realms that were extremely terrifying. Very few people dared to enter because they would die the moment they entered. The world of reincarnation was one of the most terrifying forbidden grounds. It was a miniature particle world. That's his own courage. If he didn't enter the world of samsara, how would he be able to obtain this pair of samsara eyes? The myriad incarnations immortal king smiled at her disciple. However, this Qin Wentian isn't simple as well. Look at his eyes, they are extremely terrifying as well. The undying immortal king laughed. Everyone only saw Qin Wentian and Hua Taishu staring at each other. Qin Wentian's entire body shone with a white light as he unleashed a terrifying battle art. Hua Taishu was proficient in illusionary techniques. In that case, his attacks would naturally be weaker in terms of strength. This was Hua Taishu's weakness. Only by breaking apart Hua Taishu's illusions and suppressing them with force would he be able to defeat his opponent. Qin Wentian stepped out. It was like all the illusions in the surroundings were seen through by him, not entering his eyes at all. When Hua Taishu saw this scene, the light in his eyes grew even more terrifying. His pupils spun rapidly, causing the entire space around him to twist and distort, forcibly pulling Qin Wentian into another illusory space. Over here, there were countless familiar figures of Qin Wentian floating before Qin Wentian's eyes. Calm your heart. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice. A terrifying aura abruptly gushed forth as he dashed towards Hua Taishu. At this moment, a silhouette appeared in front of him. That silhouette was none other than Mo Qingcheng. It was so realistic, it was as though the real Mo Qingcheng had appeared right in front of him. Qin Wentian furrowed his brows, his aura fluctuated slightly. This was Mo Qingcheng, how should he act against her? In the next instant, he saw a pair of eyes that could cause people to sink into samsara. This pair of eyes directly penetrated through his white eyes. Instantly, numerous scenes appeared in his mind. He saw a towering immortal palace, he saw his parents. Over there, experts were as common as the clouds, as though something major had happened. Numerous powerful existences that resembled fiend gods radiated their might, engulfing the heavens and earth. Everything was so clear, it was like a samsara that belonged to him. Careful! In the outside world, Jun Mengchen exclaimed in shock. Hua Taishu's long spear was already nearing Qin Wentian's throat. This spear strike was too fast, so fast that even Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian were on tenterhooks. A violent demonic roar rang out as a terrifying demonic qi erupted forth, protecting Qin Wentian's body, directly blocking the long spear. And at the same instant, Qin Wentian opened his eyes. Hua Taishu retreated backwards. However, Qin Wentian's aim was precisely this strike. How could he allow his opponent to retreat? Terrifying rumbling sounds rang out as numerous golden silhouettes descended from the sky, suppressing everything, sealing off Hua Taishu's path of retreat. Both his palms blasted out explosively as runic light filled the sky, capable of plucking the stars and seizing the moon, as well as containing a scorching heat that seemed capable of destroying everything. Upon seeing this scene, Hua Taishu's silhouette shuddered. In an instant, numerous silhouettes manifested, both real and illusory, as though they were real existences. These silhouettes flickered in the air, with resplendent runic light shimmering on their backs. They lifted their palms to attack, stacking their attacks on top of each other, transforming into a single attack that collided with Qin Wentian's terrifying palm imprints, resulting in a direct explosion. At the same time, Qin Wentian felt numerous samsara eyes staring at him, wanting to penetrate through his eyes. Instantly, countless scenes flashed through his mind. There were things that happened in reality, as well as illusions that didn't exist. Boom! Qin Wentian ignited both his bloodlines. Pure white runic light radiated from his body, akin to divine flames. His eyes grew even more terrifying. With just a single glance, he was able to see through all the silhouettes of Hua Taishu, locating the location of Hua Taishu's true body. The numerous silhouettes of Hua Taishu all lifted their spears and stabbed towards Qin Wentian. Each spear strike seemed to bore into Qin Wentian's eyes. If one looked carefully, they would be able to see countless scenes flashing through Qin Wentian's eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that Qin Wentian's bloodline was so terrifying, there was no way for him to fight against Hua Taishu. At this moment, a terrifying light flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. He inclined his head and roared in rage, "Come down." As the sound of his voice faded, the suppression annihilation astral soul in the air unceasingly manifested numerous golden silhouettes that descended from the skies. Accompanied by thunderous rumbling sounds, these golden silhouettes stood in different directions, faintly forming into an extremely powerful diagram. One of Hua Taishu's golden silhouettes felt a stifling pressure at this instant. That diagram's glow, other than containing a suppressive might, was also exuding an incomparably mysterious energy that sealed this entire space. Boom! Tens of thousands of silhouettes appeared at the same time. Qin Wentian ignored all the attacks. With a roar of rage, the tens of thousands of silhouettes all blasted out a terrifying punch in a single direction. Terrifying white runic flames flowed through the air. Everywhere they passed by, everything was reduced to ashes. Hua Taishu's original body was currently trapped within the terrifying suppression diagram, and for a period of time, he had no way to extricate himself. Boom, boom, boom. Numerous terrifying attacks exploded in front of Hua Taishu. Hua Taishu finally managed to extricate himself from the suppression diagram as he retreated abruptly, floating in the air. His eyes gradually returned to normal, turning calm as he stared at Qin Wentian. "Seems like the number one of Grand Xia is still you." After experiencing 9 reincarnations, he was defeated once again when he faced off against Qin Wentian today. His strength lay in his illusions. Very few people on the same level as him could break through his illusions, even experts with a higher cultivation base wouldn't be able to do so. However, Qin Wentian actually had the ability to break through his illusions. And in terms of attacks, he was clearly at a disadvantage. His attacks weren't as strong as Qin Wentian's. He was very clear about this point. Defeated. When the spectators heard Hua Taishu's words, they couldn't help but feel a sense of melancholy in their hearts. This was too fascinating, two geniuses contending against each other on the battle platform. But ultimately, Hua Taishu was defeated. As for the number one of Grand Xia and his words, the spectators didn't understand. But Qin Wentian understood. Their hometown was Grand Xia, and both of them originated from Grand Xia. Most probably, this was Hua Taishu's obsession. The two of them, from Grand Xia all the way to the vast immortal realms, Qin Wentian was still able to suppress Hua Taishu in every aspect. Why is there a need to determine who's number one and who's number two? Wouldn't it be better if more demon-level geniuses of Grand Xia emerged? Qin Wentian spoke. Right. Hua Taishu smiled and nodded. As for those at the immortal banquet, the countenances of the spectators were all extremely fascinating. The myriad incarnations immortal king froze for a moment before she stared at Qin Wentian and smiled. What a demon-level genius. Both of them are talents with great potential. This disciple of yours has already reached the peak of perfection in his illusions. In the future, his accomplishments in illusions might even surpass you. If he can make up for his other aspects, it's hard to imagine what kind of character he would be able to create. The undying immortal king stroked his beard as he laughed. Even he wanted to train Qin Wentian. Not bad. At this moment, Dongxing Ting also spoke. His gaze was fixed on Qin Wentian on the battle platform as he felt a complicated feeling in his heart. Qin Wentian actually defeated Qin Wentian. In that case, which ranking should he place Qin Wentian in? At this moment, Qin Wentian also turned his gaze over. Dongxing Ting smiled and continued, "Back then, you have already displayed outstanding talent. My royal father initially wanted to accept you as a disciple, but sadly, you rejected my royal father's suggestion of 1,000 years of tempering. But since you are able to make a comeback, it's not bad at all. However, let me ask you, if the things back then could happen again, would you agree to my royal father's suggestion of 1,000 years of tempering?" When Dongxing Ting spoke this sentence, his eyes gleamed with sharpness as he stared at Qin Wentian. This caused the hearts of many to tremble. This sentence had a deep meaning behind it. One could even say that Dongxing Ting was giving Qin Wentian a chance to become one of the top 3 rankers. Qin Wentian stared at Dongxing Ting with a calm countenance. After which, he slowly spoke, "1,000 years is too long, but my heart is still the same." Chapter 883. My heart is still the same. Qin Wentian's voice was filled with resolution. If this was a rematch, even if he didn't know that the Dongxing Heaven Emperor was doing this on purpose, he would still reject it. To immortal kings, 1,000 years might pass by in the blink of an eye. But to him who has only lived for tens of years, 1,000 years was simply too long. Maybe, Qin Wentian also understood the meaning behind Dongxing Ting's words. Maybe, Dongxing Ting was probing him, wanting to see if Qin Wentian knew how to compromise, and if he knew how to lower his head. If he lowered his head now, he would do so again in the future. Hence to Dongxing Ting, if Qin Wentian was willing to lower his head, he was willing to give Qin Wentian a chance to enter the top 3 and enter the tutelage of his royal father. In the future, he would grind away the wanton and unrestrained aura from him, allowing him to become someone who truly knew how to be loyal. However, Qin Wentian was still the same. Qin Wentian could also try to curry favor with Dongxing Ting. However, this would go against his heart. As a cultivator, one's heart had to be firm. Even if he couldn't enter the top 3, he would. This selection process, to him, was the true tempering exercise. Naturally, for the sake of perfection, he would do his best to become one of the top 3. But he wouldn't do it against his heart. The eyes of the immortal kings gleamed with sharpness as they stared at Qin Wentian. This young man defeated Hua Taishu, and although he was ranked last in the first round, he was still one of the top 3 in the second round. In addition to his outstanding performance today, it wouldn't be impossible for him to enter the top 3. Dongxing Ting's words seemed to be hinting at him. However, he rejected it with no hesitation because his heart was still the same. His heart would never change. His heart is resolute, he's a good material. Not bad. Dongxing Ting smiled. As for what he was thinking in his heart, only Dongxing Ting himself would know. Senior Myriad Transformations disciple Hua Taishu is also a dragon among men. How terrifying are those samsara eyes of his. In the future, if he is tempered by an immortal king, he would be able to consign his enemies to eternal damnation with a single glance. If my royal father saw him, he would surely like him. Dongxing Ting laughed as he praised, "Although you lost this battle, it's also an honor to be defeated. In addition, your performance in the previous 2 rounds, you were ranked first and second respectively. Only Gusu Tianqi can be compared to you." The spectators could hear the meaning behind Dongxing Ting's words. It seemed that Dongxing Ting intended to place Hua Taishu within the top 3. If Hua Taishu was one of the top 3 rankers, Gusu Tianqi should be one of them as well. Who was the other person? The gazes of many turned to Jun Mengchen. Given the talent Jun Mengchen displayed, Dongxing Ting would definitely allow him to enter the top 3. In that case, there were no more spots left for the top 3 rankers. At this moment, intense sounds of collision rang out in the airspace above Gu Zhantian. Before this, the attention of everyone was focused on the battle between Qin Wentian and Hua Taishu, yet they neglected the battle between Feather King and Zi Qingxian. Their battle in the air was extremely violent, clashing head-on with each other, causing even the sky to shatter. At this moment in the air, Feather King seemed to have summoned a supreme ancient devil of the winged devil race, transforming into a true king of the winged devil race. His physique was incomparably terrifying while Ziqingxuan's body seemed to be burning. The golden flame divine falcon protected behind her as boundless golden flames circulated around it. At this moment, Ziqingxian seemed to have transformed into a divine falcon. The ancient devil and divine falcon fought in the air, causing the entire space to tremble. Eventually, the divine falcon defeated the feather devil race, tearing apart its wings. However, the divine falcon was also injured, but ultimately, Ziqingxian seemed to have the upper hand. The two of them floated in the air, both had a pair of gigantic wings on their backs. Their gazes were incomparably sharp as they stared at each other. It was as though a towering battle intent was burning within them. Bzz. A terrifying bolt of lightning shot out as the Feather King howled in rage. Ziqingxian let out a thunderous roar as the golden flame divine falcon radiated with boundless shadow light. In an instant, the light from the Feather King skyrocketed as a gigantic divine falcon manifested, enveloping everything in its path. Countless illusory divine falcons flew out, unceasingly slamming into the body of the Feather King. Finally, just as the Feather King was about to slam into Ziqingxian, the divine falcon's talons slammed down, slamming the Feather King and the Feather Devil through the air. It's over, Ziqingxian actually won against the Feather King. The spectators stared at the air, they didn't expect this battle to be so fascinating. Qin Wendian and his two companions actually didn't suffer a single defeat. It was very hard to imagine why the rankings of the three of them were so low. For this final battle, it could be said that they were invincible. Among the top 10, other than Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu, the other three spots belonged to them. Qin Wendian glanced at Jun Mengchen and Ziqingxian before turning his gaze to Gusu Tianqi. This tempering exercise was nearing its end. Senior brother, next, I will fight against Hua Taishu while you fight against Gusu Tianqi. How about it? At this moment, Jun Mengchen stared at Qin Wendian as his eyes flickered with an intense light of excitement. It was as though a battle could excite him. Jun Mengchen wanted to sweep the entire platform clean. Qin Wendian stared at Jun Mengchen. He didn't doubt the strength and talent of this junior brother of his. However, if Jun Mengchen fought against Hua Taishu, Qin Wendian still didn't feel very optimistic about Jun Mengchen. Jun Mengchen was proficient in offense. His attacks were extremely powerful, and when he unleashed the clear sky worldly diagram, he was like a supreme war king that could slay gods if he met them. However, Hua Taishu was proficient in illusions, and as long as one couldn't break through his illusions, no matter how strong one's attacks were, it would be useless. If Hua Taishu fought against Jun Mengchen, there was no doubt that Jun Mengchen would win for sure. However, this situation was clearly impossible. If Jun Mengchen fought against Hua Taishu would definitely force him into an illusion. Whether or not Jun Mengchen could defeat Hua Taishu would depend on whether he could break through the illusions and dispel that terrifying whirlpool of samsara eyes. There's no need for that. My battle has already ended, and I have no intention to continue. Hua Taishu calmly replied, his words causing Qin Wendian to start, as he stared at Hua Taishu in bewilderment. He stared into Hua Taishu's eyes, only to see a hint of a smile in them. Qin Wendian instantly understood what Hua Taishu was thinking. To him, this was a tempering exercise. Wasn't it the same for Hua Taishu as well? In addition, Hua Taishu was the personal disciple of the myriad incarnations Immortal King. He had no intentions of taking the Eastern Sage Immortal King as his master. The top 3 rankings were meaningless to him. This battle was already sufficient for him, Qin Wendian. Hua Taishu understood his own illusions, and he also knew that he was still lacking. In the future, on his path of cultivation, he would make sure to perfect himself. Hua Taishu actually doesn't wish to continue fighting. The spectators were all bewildered. Since he refused to fight, that meant that there was only one opponent left for Qin Wendian and his fellow apprentices. The number 1 genius of the Eastern continent, Gusu Tianqi. Gusu Tianqi stared at the three of them as he slowly spoke. Finally, I shall fight against you guys. After speaking, Gusu Tianqi walked towards the opponents he had never challenged before. His goal was different from Hua Taishu. He wanted to become the most dazzling character in this immortal banquet. All his opponents would be defeated by him. Let's rest. Qin Wentian, Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian stood on the ancient battle platform as they watched the other battles. Mo Wen defeated Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen. Ruthless also did the same. Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen were destined to be the last two. Qin Ta was the victor of their battle. Feather King defeated Mo Wen before. His ranking should be number 6. The rankings of the remaining 5 were already determined. Feather King, Mo Wen, Ruthless, Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen. In addition, there wouldn't be too much of a dispute. Even someone as powerful as Feather King could only be ranked number 5. Naturally, this was the best ranking for the final battle. It could also be the final ranking, depending on Dong Xingting's thoughts. In the final ranking, he could also place Feather King in front of Zi Qingxian. But no matter what, this battle was already nearing its end. Gusu Tianqi swept through the other 5 participants, all of them had been defeated by him before. Not a single one was spared. After that, he didn't continue fighting. He sat down cross-legged and started to recuperate. On the ancient battle platform, there was a rare moment of silence. Even the immortal banquet quietened down. Everyone knew that the final battle was about to begin. Qingxian, can you defeat Gusu Tianqi? Qin Wentian transmitted his voiceover. Zi Qingxian had seen Gusu Tianqi's other battles and should have an idea of how strong he would be. I will lose. Zi Qingxian didn't conceal anything and directly replied. It wasn't easy for her to defeat Feather King, but Gusu Tianqi's victory over Feather King was extremely domineering, erupting forth with a shocking amount of energy. If she fought against Gusu Tianqi, the ending could already be predicted. In that case, do you still want to fight? Qin Wentian asked again. There's no need. Although I have no fate with the top 3, I've already gained a lot from this trip. My tempering exercise shall end here. Why must I seek another defeat? Zi Qingxian straightforwardly replied. She admitted that she was inferior to Gusu Tianqi. It wasn't that she didn't have the courage to fight. It was just that from her point of view, there was no longer a need to. How many of you still want to continue fighting? If we stop here, the rankings can be directly revealed. At this moment, Dong Xingting's eyes gleamed with sharpness as he spoke. If we stop here, who will be the top 3? Jun Mengchen stared at Dong Xingting as he asked. Gusu Tianqi was first in the first round and second in the second. He won all 5 of his battles and the others didn't dare to issue a challenge. He shall be ranked first. Hua Taishu was first in the first round and second in the second. Although he was defeated once, it doesn't diminish his brilliance. He shall be ranked second. Jun Mengchen has a unique physique. Although his performance in the first 2 rounds was ordinary, he was undefeated in the final battle. He shall be ranked third. Qin Wentian, although he was ranked last in the first round, he defeated Hua Taishu in the final battle and was undefeated. He shall be ranked fourth. Dong Xingting slowly spoke. Jun Mengchen directly interrupted. For the first 2 rounds, senior brother Qin obtained the top 3 in the second round and defeated Hua Taishu in this round. His battle result isn't inferior to mine. Why am I in the top 3 but senior brother Qin isn't? Also, if senior brother Qin and I defeat Gusu Tianqi, what would our rankings be? The selection test of the Immortal Banquet is based on one's overall strength. The talent you displayed is unique, and if you can defeat both Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu, I can even allow you to be ranked first. Even if you are defeated, you shall still be ranked third. As for Qin Wentian, even if he defeated Gusu Tianqi and obtained the first position in this round, his overall ranking shouldn't be higher than Gusu Tianqi or Hua Taishu. Dong Xingting's meaning was extremely clear. He was willing to give Jun Mengchen a spot in the top 3, but he was determined to push Qin Wentian to the 4th position. For the first 2 rounds, he allowed Qin Wentian to obtain the best ranking. And now, it seemed that he was playing a crucial role, preventing Qin Wentian from entering the top 3,